Take it back. We're ready to go.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll take a sip.
That's good. We didn't have to hear the joke.
I'm not good with jokes. Good evening and welcome to the Brattleboro Selectboard meeting of Tuesday, August 6th. We did get started at 5:30 for a committee interview and then an executive session. At that time, I asked the town manager whether the meeting was properly warned, and he said...
Yes, it was.
Great, and it was. First order of business is to approve minutes. We have minutes from July 23rd, 2024. I'll take a motion.
I move that the minutes be approved.
Okay, Francis made a motion to approve the minutes. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0. We'll move on to Chair's remarks. I just got some procedural remarks this evening. It's nice to see everybody here. If you haven't already signed in, there's a little sign-in sheet on that table as you came into the room. If folks could sign in, it's for our meeting records so that we know who attended and later on for when they speak. And then the other procedural thing I want to say is when you're addressing the meeting, we all have presenters at times. And so this is a meeting of the select board, so you address the select board. And I, as select board chair, will mediate your questions back to presenters and so forth. We'll always ask for you to state your name, and you'll always be given up to 3 minutes. If you need more time, you may get it. Depends on how we're doing with the meeting. And we'll try to hear from as many different people as possible. Okay? And that's all I have for Chair's remarks this evening. John, manager's comments?
Thank you, Daniel. So tonight is National Night Out at the Brattleboro Common until 8 p.m. So if we get done here, we can head over there. And this is a family-friendly event that's sponsored by the Brattleboro Police Department with lots of activities for kids. Officers will be available to chat with and answer questions. National Night Out is an annual community building campaign held throughout the country on the first Tuesday in August. The state primary election is next week on Tuesday, August 13th from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the American Legion right here. If a voter has requested absentee ballots, they must be returned to the town and in hand by the close of polls on Election Day, 7 p.m. Voters may still pick up absentee ballots for themselves only from the town clerk's office, or they can vote early in the town clerk's office. There's a lot of information about the election, including some sample ballots that's on the town website, and the town clerk's office will be closed all day on August 13th for the election and will reopen at noon on Wednesday, August 14th. Rec and Parks is looking for additional feedback regarding the future of the town pool at Living Memorial Park now that the latest conceptual designs are done. So please visit brattleboro.gov to find that survey and weigh in on it. If you have additional feedback on the future of the pool or need help filling out that survey, please call the Rec and Parks Department at 802-254-5808. or email recreation@brattleboro.gov, and all of that feedback will be shared with the select board at a future meeting. The summer season is winding down at the pool, and hours of operation will be 1 to 6 p.m. this week and next week, and the pool will close for the year on Sunday, August 18th at 6 p.m.
Great. Thanks, John.
Yep.
Select board members with comments and or committee reports. Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to public participation. This is the part of the meeting where members of the public can speak about something that is not on the agenda. As I said before, you'll be asked to state your name. You'll be given up to 3 minutes. And I think knowing that maybe many people are here to speak about public safety, I want to point out that there is a public safety related item on the agenda today. Which is safety zones and related interventions coming up probably just before 8 o'clock. If you wanted to speak and have a substantive kind of response maybe to your comments, I would say wait until then. If you wanted to say something in this part of the meeting, you can, but you're not going to get much in the way of response. It's going to be absorbed. We'll take it into account. Maybe it'll come back up later on, okay? The other thing that could happen in public participation is if there were items on our consent agenda, which is coming up next, that you would like the board to have a discussion of, then you could request that a board member remove one of those items from the consent agenda at this time, okay? So if there's anyone in the room who would like to speak, all you need to do is raise your hand and I will recognize you in turn. So first of all, person in the black t-shirt. Okay. Yeah. So if you could come up to the microphone and state your name and where you're from.
All right, thank you for choosing me first. I appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
I am a Brattleboro resident, and my name is Daniel Bransford. I come here to discuss the price increase for the parking garage for the transit station. Since I had lived here in April, the safety, the quality of the entire building and services has gone down. I have a specific complaint about one of the safety personnel that hangs out with the folks who actually do not belong there, as opposed to removing them from the property. And I also would like to point out that there is a large amount of people that are not paying for parking spots that are going in, looking in windows, pulling on door handles. They're actually relieving themselves, defecating and urinating within the parking garage, inside of the elevator. And just overall, it's just the homeless situation is out of hand. I came from downtown LA, and for the first time in my life, I saw a woman relieve herself in the streets. I now had the pleasure of seeing that again in Brattleboro, Vermont on Main Street the other day, last week. So it is absolutely out of hand. I'd lived here about 10 years ago, and Sam's was open. It was a completely different place. It's gone to hell. I'm sorry. Excuse my, I'm very upset about this. I've been personally harassed multiple times within the parking garage to the point where I thought I was going to have to defend myself. And I understand that the Vermont law states you have to run away. Well, I don't want to pay $200 plus a month or every 3 months or whatever to run and hide from people in a parking garage that I pay for. So that's my complaint.
Thank you. I'm going to ask that we don't applaud simply because it doesn't allow for a fair environment. We can have times where people are applauded and other times maybe where people are booed, and that would not be appropriate decorum for this room. So I understand where you're coming from, but let's not do that. Who would like to speak next? Mr. DeGray? You can just raise your hand. And, okay. Yep. So I'll take Mr. DeGray behind you. He had his hand up before, and then I'll come to you.
Thank you, Dick DeGray, Brattleboro. I want to talk about the last meeting and the missed opportunities we had when we had the legislature here and Mr. Baker here and the assistant chief here, and we actually had the chief online, and especially when the assistant chief was giving us statistics about where the majority of their calls are, and the Quality Inn being the #1 spot. And with the legislature all sitting behind me when I got up to speak, why none of us asked why there isn't rules for oversight at the Quality Inn. It's their program, and yet we're going up. That's the #1 place for us to respond to with our fire department, and why these bad apples are allowed to stay. And that's a question for the legislature. That's not for us. And yet, I ask you, and I include myself when I say this, why didn't any of us ask them, why isn't there any oversight? And then I look at Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust, that they were on there. Why don't you ask them to come to a select board meeting and say, you know what, what's going on with your oversight and your screening process? What's going on with your rental properties? There's a few bad apples that are ruining it for a lot of their tenants, and you should have them here to have them defend their screening process and Groundworks, which I think we gave them a significant amount of money. We actually give Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust money also. And so we have the right to ask them to come here and say, what's going on? Why are you people here, the leading people where our police department's going? And I'd like to have them here so I could ask them in public. What do we have, a murder up at Great River? Is that what the name of that place is called, up on Putney Road? I mean, that place is just bad. And so is the Quality Inn. And you guys should be asking that question because it's straining our police department where they can't be downtown, which is the majority of reasons why these people are here. And so when we're responding to places that have a high number of calls, like that place, I mean, let's get those people out of there. And it's the state that should have oversight. They've been doing this now for 4 years with no oversight. And that's a shame to not only Brattleboro, but wherever else it's happening in the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am? Yeah, let me know if you need any help. We can just move the microphone to you. You don't need...
Yeah, we can just move the microphone.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Melissa Mann Schultz. I was born here at BMH, grew up in Brattleboro, and have lived in Germany for the last 30 years. My husband and I recently bought a house on Black Mountain Road and are here 6 months of the year. I'm very happy to be back in Brattleboro, but also shocked at what has developed. And there are really two anecdotes that I'd like to tell you. How an anecdote is usually something funny, but this certainly isn't. The other day, Rudolph and I were driving down South Main and into the bottom part of, lower part of Main Street. And there's that Plaza Park with the fountain where the statue used to be. And there were two men washing themselves and their clothes in the fountain. And I thought, that's just horrible. And I mentioned this to a friend of mine who's 21 years old. He lives on Frost Place with his wife and two little children, a 2-year-old and a 3-month-old. And he said, oh, that happens. That happens. That's nothing unusual. And he told me that he would not go to the parks, the nearby parks with his kids, because there are so many needles in the parks, and they're just so dirty and awful. So if he goes somewhere with his kids, he goes further away. And I just think it's time, high time, for something to happen to clean up and improve the safety in downtown Brattleboro.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other members of the public wish to be recognized. I'm going to take this person here, and then Steve in the back, and then if anybody's on Zoom, and then yourself. Yep, go right ahead.
Kevin Perry from Brattleboro, Vermont, and I actually have written this out, so if you don't mind, I'm just going to read from what I've written.
That's
Dear
fine.
members of the Brattleboro Select Board, I have heard that the town of Brattleboro is considering some new ordinances to deal with the problems of vagrancy, drug abuse, harassment, and a general toxic environment, especially in the area of downtown Brattleboro. I wish to point out that there are a number of ordinances already in place. I recommend that the Select Board look into increasing enforcement of these ordinances. For example, I would like to point out several of these ordinances. Chapter 19, Cemetery Ordinance, Section 19-6. All town cemeteries shall be open from dawn until dusk from May 1st through November. I just want to repeat that, dawn till dusk, all right? Section 19-7, the Brattleboro Select Board shall be responsible for the enforcement of all rules and regulations and for maintaining good order and decorum on the cemetery grounds. All right, I have two more. Chapter 13, Article 5, Section 13-87, public nudity prohibited. Chapter 13, Article 8, Section 13-302, camping on public lands or public parks prohibited. Now I'd like to add my own opinion. It feels to me that the rights of a small minority of transient citizens are overpowering and disrupting the safety, the comfort, and security of the majority of the citizens of Brattleboro. I would like to see the balance restored. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve, and then yourself. Yeah, thank you.
Excuse me. Yeah, Steve Zaluzny. I'm observing, as usual, what's happening in town over the months that go by this summer. I see some good things happening, see more police presence. I see police doing certain things that interacting with merchants and other, that sounds like it's progress on that level. I know there's other things going on behind the scenes that I'm not familiar with, and I'm going to try to learn what those are as far as safety and so forth. One thing I've mentioned before, and it comes up again in today's paper, that the Groundworks Collaborative will build a new facility. Their director states that Brattleboro is a hub for services. Okay, so we have developed quite a hub here. People, where people can come because we have facilities, a lot of social services, and we are helping people who are not from Brattleboro. And this is a policy issue. You're working on many issues here, but this is a bigger policy issue that's really, burying us. We're being buried by the numbers. I mean, we can try to help people in housing or drug abuse or whatever, but we don't have the capacity, the EMS or the fire, to deal with all the numbers, the sheer numbers. I implore you to talk to state representatives to make policy changes. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. In that same article that you're quoting from, you'll find probably in the next paragraph where Ms. Bennett spoke about that 90% of the folks accessing those services are from around here. So I think that's fair to put.
Totally incorrect. I've researched that.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Joanne, right? Thank you.
I apologize. I'm going to read.
That's okay.
My name is Joanne McClellan. I live in West Brattleboro. Thank you for hearing us tonight about issues of town safety and your work on that issue. It's appreciated. It's not a simple problem, and there are no simple answers. So I'm a part of a group of concerned citizens who have experienced various levels of feeling unsafe in our town due to illegal drug usage and distribution and the associated behaviors that occur in relation to that criminal activity. We met to brainstorm, and they asked me to speak kind of on behalf of this little group. We met to brainstorm areas of highest concern and to bring our concerns to you because you are the people in our town who can mandate changes, and you have the power to initiate change that will improve the quality of life for all of our community members. Our group has reviewed the August 2nd memo from John Potter, town manager, entitled Safety Zones and Related Interventions. We were very impressed with its organization, detail, and thoroughness. We were also happy to see that all of the concerns that we came up with so far are addressed in the memo. We're hoping that the Select Board's discussion about this memo, any adopted action plans, and the implementation of these plans will be a top priority of the Select Board's work in the very immediate future. Although we know you're aware of town happenings around illegal drug usage, I'd like to share some specific experiences from my daily life. When my husband and I first moved here 2 years ago, we lived in Morningside Commons. We were excited to be able to walk in the cemetery, which I know sounds strange, but if you've been there, you know why. And then we were told by our friends and neighbors to be careful of drug paraphernalia because it was a known area for drug users to hang out. So I went for a walk by myself and then felt just uncomfortable because there's lots of bushes and I just felt uncomfortable, which was not good. So then I just walked with friends or my husband after that. So that was a little sad. A second example, more importantly, is from last month. I took 3 preteen girls to the Latches Theater for a movie, and I wanted to park in the lot across from the transportation center. So as I drove in, I drove past the back corner and didn't want to park anywhere back there. So I went up to the street, but even then, people from the transportation center are hollering across to the other group, and I had to go get the ticket over there and felt uncomfortable with that. But more than that, I was worried that the girls might witness something inappropriate or even dangerous. But they did not seem at all fazed, which bothered me even more. So here are these adults who are smoking, hanging out in tents, using foul language, most likely doing drugs. It greatly concerns me that this scene is so much a fabric, a part of the fabric of the town, that these 3 young women just consider it as the status quo. So what are we conditioning our children to by condoning these behaviors in public?
Thanks, Joanne.
So thank you for listening, and I appreciate your time.
Yep, thank you. Okay, Patrick.
Yes, sir.
I see there's been a lot of activity on Zoom. Some of it's ringing some alarm bells for me.
Same here.
Yeah. Would we like to recognize this person with their hand up?
That would be at your...
All right. You be ready on the...
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what is the name of this person?
It says Lavi.
Okay, so you are recognized. Yeah. All right.
You're on record.
Sorry, guys. That's something we have to put up with. I wish was funny, but it isn't. Thanks so much. Yeah, we're going to move on. So the next item on our list is the consent agenda. Okay. I didn't see you. Would you like to speak real quick?
Hello, I'm Terry Sherman. I'm from Brattleboro. I've lived here for 44 years. I'm a taxpayer, have been for 44 years. I am part of the group that has been meeting regarding our town. First of all, I've had an elderly woman tell me that she witnessed some sexual behaviors that are not acceptable in public. We've also seen at the fountain 3 people engaged in sexual behavior, and that's not acceptable. Open containers, violence. 3 weeks ago, I went to go to open mic on Flat Street, and first there were 4, and before I know it, there's 22, 30 of them over on this side of the parking lot at Preston's. And the gentleman, I'm going to call him a gentleman but he's not, with a tattoo of the swastika, freaked me out so bad that I had to sit there for 45 minutes because I didn't dare get out of my car because of his actions. I made sure 2 of my elderly friends were able to get safely to the underground. I wasn't. I didn't even dare get out of my car. The other day I went to Experience Goods, dropped off 10 o'clock in the morning. I dropped off items for Experience Goods. Go by Preston's, here they are again. They're all getting packages given to them. They're doing their drugs. My grandson, 50% of the time, has to live in the snow block because there's no housing. He's 8 years old. He's already seen one person jump off the parking garage. 8 years old. There are needles everywhere in the parking lots. Some of our stores can't open without going around and picking up the needles, cleaning up the vomit, the bodily fluids, the garbage that they've left behind. I, for one, have not gone to the movies in almost 2 months because I'm not going to come out at 8 o'clock at night and have to deal with, give me your money. I've already been insulted in front of the post office. Guy threatened me with a 3x3 by 3 foot board. Give me all your money. No. I work 3 jobs. No. I know that the Brattleboro Museum is losing money. Our town is losing money. We need foot people on the ground, police officers that have the authority. And if we have to keep arresting them 20 times, you know what? They're going to run out of friends to bail them out with a $200 bail. It's $20. One of their druggie friends has the money. Latches is saying they're losing money. All of our stores are losing money. And yes, I know I'm over my 3 minutes, but I don't normally talk. I'm petrified for my grandson. And there are other elderly people that go out to the events. We're not safe. I know you have a safety zone coming up. It's more than that. We need people on the ground. We need to turn the parking garage back into a substation with police presence. Thank you.
Thank you. And so I'm going to take like maybe 2 comments. You can have a minute each. We have a substantive item about public safety. If that's what you'd like to talk about, we can have a big discussion about that later on. So you're welcome to speak now real quick and get no response, or you can be part of that conversation. Yep.
Hi, my name is Scott Knickerbocker. I live on Putney Road, 479 Putney Road. Thank you for hearing my comments.
You're welcome.
I just want to say that I'm a dealer at Twice Upon a Time Antiques here in Brattleboro, and at times I also work at the store. And it seems that when I'm working there with increasing frequency, I do hear from some of the customers that are walking in that they are becoming more hesitant to come into the store to shop. They do fear for their safety, and I think that the parking on Flat Street is becoming less and less of an option for some of the store's customers, and of course, parking on Main Street can be a challenge as well. But I just thought it was important. I mean, I've heard this from our customers that go into the store. And, how long is this going to go on before you just start seeing, some stores shutting down because they can't pay the rent, because they're not getting the people there, et cetera, et cetera. And I just think this could have the potential to have a cascading effect as we go into the future. So I just wanted to let you hear my thoughts and what I hear from some of the customers that go into the store. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Okay. Thank you, folks, for your comments. I know it takes a lot to speak up like that in a public setting, so you're heard. It's appreciated, and we will have a substantive discussion about some of the things that you're talking about later on in the agenda. So the next thing on our agenda is the consent agenda. John, would you like to just walk us through that?
Sure, Daniel. We have 3 items on the consent agenda tonight. If you approve this agenda, you will be approving first and third class liquor licenses and an annual entertainment permit application for Snow Republic located at 100 Main Street. In an administrative error, the entertainment permit was left off the agenda, but the administrative report and all the backup materials and motion addressed it for approval for the same venue. You'll be approving the low bid award of the Brannan Street retaining wall project to Bernie LaRocque and Sons of Guilford for $54,600. And you will be approving the single low bid award of the gymnastics spring floor replacement project at the Gibson-Aiken Center to Deary's Gymnastics Supply of Danielson, Connecticut for $26,670.
Thanks, John.
Yep.
Board members, somebody like to make a motion?
I'll motion that
Peter?
we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? Okay, all those in favor of accepting the consent agenda as presented, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Aye, that passes 5-0. So the first item, well, the next item on our agenda is old business. It's the Fire Department quarterly report for quarter 4 from fiscal year 24. Chief Howard, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. This was on our agenda last meeting, and we pulled it off a consent agenda and then tabled it until today so that you could join us and speak to this important information. So,
sure,
it's all yours.
So this is the This is the last quarterly report that ended in June, and with that, for the year we did 3,275 EMS calls. Our average time to scene was 4 minutes and 21 seconds. 90th percentile to scene emergent response was 6 minutes and 51 seconds. Average dispatch from the time we cleared from the call is 28 minutes and 36 seconds. We transported 2,150 people for 66% of the 3,275, and 1,125, 34% were non-transport. We needed 2 ambulances 626 times, or 19% of the time, and 3 ambulances 49 times, or 2% of the time, and mutual aid once for 0.03% of the time. As far as the EMS startup costs budget, again, this is for the ending in June. And I can, since then, we've taken delivery of a second ambulance, which we've paid for. We've bought many other things that are going to stock that ambulance. So you're going to see a big difference in the EMS startup costs when we come back in October for our next quarterly report. So you're going to see totally different numbers, and happy to explain them then. That's why I know some people say they don't understand the numbers. The reason is because this is ending in June. The biggest part of this budget is ambulances. We've gotten the second one. We just got it back yesterday from being all lettered. The goal is to have it in service within a week or two. And then the last ambulance we're waiting for we'll take delivery in the end of this month. And my guess would be probably by October we'll have that one in service. Happy to answer any questions that you folks may have regarding the report.
Great, thank you. Would somebody like to make a motion before we proceed with questions?
I'll motion that we accept the presentation as presented.
Okay. To accept the Fire Department's quarterly report for FY24 quarter 4. Will you accept that?
What you said.
Yes, great. Okay, questions for Chief Howard? Franz?
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. So ambulances 3 with a budget of $666,100. So the actual amount is $384,000, etc. What's included in the $384,000, and how are we doing in terms of the total cost? If we're still, if this doesn't include a couple of the ambulances.
That actually includes part of the second ambulance, and we just sent out the remaining part of the bill for that ambulance. It also entails getting it lettered and stuff like that. So we're looking like we're right on budget, and we have to watch it, and we may have to be good in other areas of the budget to take care of that over expenditure in that one line item.
Okay, so you are anticipating some degree of overage.
In that particular line item, but we will be able to save it in other areas.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Other questions? Richard?
I guess I understand that this graph that you have about the different calls by type.
Yeah.
In that giant section of general illness, in the near future, you're going to break that down and categorize it?
We'll be able to do it better now that it's us, that it's our reporting system that we're doing our reports in. Prior to July 1st, Golden Cross was here, and because it was their hybrid system with them, we were using their reporting system, which we didn't have total access to. So yes, the data is going to be much better now that it's in our system and we can pull the data out of the system.
And will you also do the same thing for mental health and categorize those and not just lump them together?
We can try.
I mean, I think that would be pretty important because of, the safety issues. That relates to a lot of the safety issues in mental health.
That's true.
If it was characterized better, and I think it would be more important to know that.
Okay. Thanks, Richard. Other questions? Liz?
Hi, Chief.
Hi.
How's morale, and how would you characterize how the takeover of the ambulance service is going?
Morale's good. The takeover since July 1st, it's really been seamless. It's been a very good transition. I'm very pleased. And it's because of the people that I have that work for me. They did this. They're the ones that are making it seamless, and I can't thank them enough. And it's going well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Franz, you had a follow-up question?
I have another question.
Okay, great.
Could you say a few words about the medical control and the district governance at this point? I've just heard some fragmentary information about who's filling what roles in that structure, and I just don't know exactly what's going on.
So the fire department has their own medical director, which is Dr. Storn, and Dr. Storn is still our medical director. District 13, which is 13 ambulance districts within the state of Vermont, they have a medical director, which oversees the whole district, which used to be Dr. Storm, but he took a different position at Dartmouth. So he's not working down here at BMH anymore, so I don't believe he's the district's medical advisor anymore. We have a district meeting coming up soon, and we'll learn who that is. My guess is it's Dr. Swosey in the interim. But Superintendent Fritz and Dr. Storn talk daily. As a matter of fact, tomorrow we have a review of 5 different cases that we're going to review with Dr. Storn, and staff comes in and we all go over it and talk about what went good, what could we do better. It's very good feedback for all of our people. And we'll continue to do that monthly. And if something glaring comes up to Dr. Storn, he reaches right out right away and says, ask the questions and we answer them.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, members of the public, I think I saw a hand at the back. Yep, Mr. DeGray, and then a hand on Zoom, Mr. Oza. And if you would address your question to me, I will bounce it over there maybe.
I've had my hand slapped before. So a couple of questions about the EMS calls, and one would be untimely and or is it overdoses? It would be great if we knew the numbers.
Okay.
But the overdoses, how many of those resulted in death? How many of those resulted in Narcan use? And did any of the overdoses, are they categorized as untimely?
You have other questions? We'll take all of the questions then. You have other questions?
Well, I'll wait. Well, it's always nice if you have a follow-up question.
Okay. Yeah, you're welcome to ask any other questions you want to ask right now. No? Okay. Well, Chief Howard?
So when we do go on overdose calls, and if Narcan was administered by us, we document it. If we're able to ask, typically they tell us if they've given Narcan prior to our arrival, and we document that on our reports as well. So whether the bystanders gave the Narcan or if we gave the Narcan, it's documented. Unfortunately, some of those untimelies are related to the overdoses that was not a great outcome. And that does, not all of them, but some of them are overdose related.
Thanks, Chief. Ms. Rosa on Zoom. Hey, Bob.
I think I'm here.
Yep. We can hear you. We can see you.
So I think, well, let me address these questions to the board.
Thank you so much.
So with respect to the EMS calls by type, I had a couple of questions that you may want to follow up with. For cardiac arrest, do we have a save rate? How many of those cases resulted in a good outcome? And then, so the same thing, the same question really applies also to the overdose category. How many of those were saved? And then looking at overdoses and kind of remembering what the assistant police chief said at our last meeting, do we have a sense or can we find out how many of those overdoses involve the same people? And then the same question goes to mental health. And then there's a category, I think, in the EMS call of altered mental state versus mental health as separate categories. How are they distinguished? But the reason for knowing if you have multiple or non-unique or unique individuals who are being serviced multiple times, then you might be able to target some resources toward that population or toward that subpopulation. Because knowing that data could have implications for further coordinating with other entities. And are we doing that now? And those are my questions.
Thanks, Bob. Chief?
I don't know. I'm not going to be able to tell you. I want to be able to get the proper answer as far as really when it comes to HIPAA, as far as what I can tell you and what I can't tell you. But I can tell you this. If you take our heat map and you take the police department's heat map and lay them over each other, they're pretty similar. Mm-hmm. That's what I can tell you. Right. But I'm certainly happy to dive into that, more of that information, and give it back to you as much of it as I can.
Thanks, Chief. Appreciate that.
Daniel?
Elizabeth? I see Elizabeth, yes.
Is that the type of thing that you work with Project CARE to resolve?
Yes. When we do go to an overdose, and prior to us leaving, or if it's a non-transport, if it's a transport, we have leave-behind kits that we leave that have Narcan and test strips and everything else in them that we leave behind with the patient. As well as in that same kit is a card with a scan for the turning point. That's all in that bag that we leave behind with the people. Sometimes they're willing to take the bag. Sometimes they're not willing to take the bag.
And does Turning Point follow up?
If they get somebody that goes to them, yes, they follow up.
Thanks, Chief. Are the other members of the board or public with comments, questions?
Yes.
France.
Thank you. So, Chief Howard, there's a number of these categories where a person could be described as more than one thing. I mean, for example, the overdose that results in an untimely death. But on this graph here, would a single person appear under multiple categories, or you would? So this isn't representative of the total number of calls. There could be more information here numerically than there were actual total calls. Mm-hmm. And that so the untimely death category could include cardiac calls, et cetera. Okay.
Can I point of order?
Yes, sure. Go right ahead.
I know that you guys are doing a great job monitoring the screen, but we just saw something that was just totally unacceptable.
Pornography.
On
that screen. Yeah.
Understood.
Okay. I don't know if you can control that or not, but we've got...
Yeah. Thank you for the point of order. It's heard. We have been here before and experienced this before, and I'm sorry that you're having to see it. Okay? Yeah. Franz, did you get your question answered?
I got part of it answered.
I'm sorry, folks.
And the interruption kind of wiped my memory.
Wait a second. Franz, wait. Yeah. Sir, there is very little that I can do that is more than what Mr. Morland, who's actually running the Zoom over there, can do. And so...
You can shut it off.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Yeah. Franz, you have a question?
Yeah, give me just a second to reframe my mind. The other part is specifically to Mr. Ozer and anybody else who has questions like what's the difference between mental illness and altered mental status. That's something that I'd be happy to address individually or however people wanted. If you want to know about that stuff, I know about that stuff. I'd be happy to talk to you about it.
Great. Thanks so much. Any other questions for Chief Howard? Okay. So we have a motion to accept the Fire Department's quarterly report for FY24 Quarter 4. Any final discussion on that? Okay. Seeing none. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 5-0. Chief Howard, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks,
have
Chief.
a good evening. We're going to move on to the first item of new business. We have members of the Agency of Human Services here to present this evening. Commissioner Chris Winters. Commissioner, thank you for joining us. Thank you. And Deputy Commissioner Miranda Gray. Yes, okay. Thank you for joining us. So I believe you are here this evening to speak about the emergency housing program. And at this point, I'll turn it over to you.
Correct. Thank you. Thanks for taking us up on our offer and inviting us to come and speak. It's really good to hear firsthand and in person from some of the impacts that your community is feeling. We've made multiple trips to Brattleboro over the last several months and can appreciate what you're struggling with. And we'd like to just come and give you a little bit more background. The offer was to come and explain what's going on with the General Assistance Emergency Housing Program, also known as the Hotel Motel Program, who we're serving there, the changes that went into effect as of July 1st, and what you might see as a community as some impacts given those changes over the next couple of months. So Deputy Commissioner Gray is in charge of the Economic Services Division, which is responsible for a lot of different economic benefits. General assistance housing used to be a very small part of that division. It's now a very large part of that division as we all grapple with the housing crisis that we're all facing and the crisis of unsheltered homelessness in many communities around the state. So I'll turn it over to Miranda to talk a little bit about the current program, the changes that are coming soon, and the impacts that you all might see in Brattleboro.
Thank you.
And we'd also be happy to answer any questions. We'll leave plenty of time for questions as well.
Questions. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you for taking us up on the offer to join, and please let me know if I'm going still too into the weeds or if you want me to go further. So as Commissioner Winters mentioned, we did just have a new law that was passed on July 1st. It's Act 113. And it does bring significant changes, a real change for those that we have been housing, because we have often said that there were changes coming, but there hasn't really been. There have been changes, but not as significant as I think that we are seeing now. So the most significant change that I'm going to start with is that now people have 80 days to use of housing, and that doesn't include what we call the adverse weather conditions time period, so that's the winter. But between July 1st and November 30th, and then April 1st and June 30th, people will only have 80 days that ESD can pay for them to stay in a motel. So this is a significant change because we have had some people staying with us for a fairly long time at this point. And then we have had others who have come to us and have left and have come back. So I think that's the main change, or one of the main changes. We also had a change in who we will be housing. Some of those changes is that during the pandemic, we were serving Vermonters who are older, and that was defined as 60 years of age and older, and now it has gone back to pre-pandemic, which is 65 years and older. We also used to only house persons who were pregnant in their third trimester, and now we will house them at any point during their pregnancy. A change that has remained, that was put in place last summer, but it will remain, is that we are serving families with children who are 19 years of age and younger. It used to be families with children who were 6 years of age and younger. And then all of those groups only have the 80 days, and that used to also be different depending on how you came in, how you were eligible. You could get 84 or 28 days. Another significant part of this new law is that we are capped at how many rooms that we can use. And so on September 15th, we can only use 1,100 rooms. And to give you context, I am currently housing about 1,450 households right now across the state. So we will have to bring that number down in order to be in compliance with the law. Those caps, so that 1,100 room cap does go away during the winter time. But a change for us with this new law is in previous winters, we would house any Vermonter who presented saying that they needed shelter. And now you have to meet one of our eligibility categories. It can't just be that you don't have access to shelter. You would have to be, and I can just quickly let you know what those are, age 65 plus, have a disability is defined as having SSI, SSDI, or there is a medical variance form that came earlier in the session. A family, a person who is pregnant, you've experienced the death of a spouse, domestic partner, or minor child. You've experienced a natural disaster. You've experienced a court-ordered or constructive eviction, or experienced domestic or similar dangerous violence. So only those households will continue to be housed. And what we know is that we were serving a population that didn't meet any of these categories. And certainly categories can change for folks. People can have a family, or maybe they are now in receipt of Social Security. And so we never quite have an exact number, but we know that there will be a change. And as part of Act 113 as well, there was a task for us to try to bring on more shelter beds for the winter, and that is our Office of Economic Opportunity that's been overseeing that process.
And just to give a little context, I think most of you may already know this, but Vermont is a shelter-first state, so the hotel-motel program is a last resort if there are no shelter beds available. We were up about 100 shelter beds over where we were last year. We were around 530 shelter beds statewide. We expect to expand that another 100 beds in the coming year. So our priority is to build more shelter beds because people can access services and hopefully get into more permanent situations when they're in a shelter versus in a hotel or a motel.
Another piece of this law is also ensuring that we are having people connected to resources to help not need the resource of a motel. And so we are working on making sure that everyone, if they're not already connected to coordinated entry, which is the pathway in Vermont into permanent housing, are connected. And if they don't want to connect, then they wouldn't be able and didn't have a reason to not be able to connect, then they wouldn't be eligible to be housed anymore. So there are some more pieces of this where we're trying to get folks to engage with us. I do think we had also learned during the time of the pandemic that we are housing a lot of people who have complex needs, and so we are also trying to make sure through our field services that we are connecting to those coordinated entry touch points, and if people do have additional needs, that we're making sure they know where they can refer people to, and how we can bring the appropriate partners in, understanding that those that do coordinated entry and have expertise in helping people get into housing might not have expertise in housing to help someone with complex medical needs. So that is a piece that we're also working on, making sure that we're getting into place. So those are, I think, the
just to put a finer point, I think on the 80-day limit, when you calculate that out from July 1st, if people stayed continuously in the program in a hotel or a motel from July 1st, that's September 19th? Is when those 80 days run out for someone who hasn't found another option by then. So I do think it's important for you to be aware of that date, September 19th. And also the date of September 15th, when the new law requires us to shrink down to 1,100 rooms, and we're about 1,400 rooms right now. So there is a distinct possibility that there will be people unsheltered in mid-September in the communities most impacted. And we know Burlington and Rutland have the most rooms in use right now. Central Vermont comes in third, and then Bennington and Brattleboro being fourth and fifth with the most number of hotel rooms and households being in the program.
And I can just add a little more nuance to that, is just we also have a lot of people that we're housing who have income. And then that is a part of our rules as well, that people need to have what we call income contributions. They pay for a certain amount of time in the motels. So we are trying to work very hard in DCF to try to have an off-ramp for folks. And to, we have communicated that this 80-day change was coming. We will be sending out more communication to those that we are housing, just so that they are clear, and hopefully that they are making plans. But we will see it kind of taper, just because we have anywhere from someone maybe has to pay for one night, but we have some folks who have to pay for over 10 nights. So there is quite a range.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Gray, Commissioner Winters. Select Board members with questions. Elizabeth? We'll go with the board first, and then I'll come to you, okay?
Well, I thank you both for coming. I think it's a signal to our town that the administration is listening and understands that the housing program has had a profound impact on our town. And I'm hoping that in addition to what you had to tell us, that you're open to hearing what the effect is on from our municipal perspective. And I hope that we can find some answers. First of all, this program was intended to be a temporary COVID-related shelter, and it has become a spot for chronic homelessness, which is a different order of concern and a different problem to solve in terms of finding permanent housing. So the most important thing that I would like to convey in terms of the municipal situation is that Brattleboro, it was assumed that Brattleboro would take this shelter, and that Brattleboro services are being employed with no expense to the state, and therefore the Brattleboro taxpayers are assuming the responsibility for the considerable police, fire, EMS, public works, library, park and recreation, buses, you name it. The Brattleboro taxpayer who pays taxes at an increasing rate to all of the surrounding communities, a much higher tax rate, and has a much higher percentage of poverty, over 20%, than the state as a whole. So we are burdened on top of being a burdensome community. And so what we need the state to understand is that with your formulas of either, less people in the shelter or more people in the shelter. Either way, it impacts Brattleboro because if there's less people being sheltered, they're on the streets. If there's more people in the shelter, there's still our responsibility as a host community. And so either way, we're affected, and there's no revenue sharing or monetary recompense from the state for the services that we provide to the people in the shelter and the motel hotel program. So it's also difficult for me to understand from your letter when you say that the department does not collect information about individuals once they leave the program. How are those people being served? Like, if they're on the streets of Brattleboro, then you've washed your hands of trying to find housing for them. I don't understand how that works, and I don't like the sound of it. So maybe you could answer that. But basically, my concern is for the people of Brattleboro. I mean, you've heard earlier, it's a daily struggle for all of us to host this number of really troubled individuals, as you said. You called them with complex needs, etc. So that is my concern. And basically, I would say that, we've had instances where bureaucrats from the state of Vermont have said, oh, the shelter has to be in Brattleboro. Brattleboro has the services. And when they say that, they're saying that the Brattleboro taxpayer has to pay for the services that are being wraparound provided to this population. And so I would say that just like a Vermont potluck dinner, someone else needs to take their turn as the host.
Thanks, Liz. Commissioner, Deputy Commissioner, I don't know if you'd like to respond to any of that.
I can just respond to a little bit of that. Thank you for the question and the statement and the observations. To the point that we don't collect information on people, it's as we said, these are individuals with complex needs. They have freedom of choice. They often have other things to worry about beyond staying in touch with us, so they really don't tell us where they go. We may see them again. As I think Deputy Commissioner said, sometimes they end up back in the hotels and motels if they're eligible, or they end up in a shelter with other services. And I guess to the point of, I understand the stress on a lot of your public services. We do make an effort to support the shelters. There's grant funding that runs through the Department for Children and Families. It's called Housing Opportunity Program. Through our Office of Economic Opportunity, we help fund and support programs like Groundworks, SEVCA, some of the other, the Winston Prouty Center. So there's another example of a shelter that we're supporting, a family shelter to hopefully get people into a stable place. The Freedom Center and Interaction are just a few of the places where we do invest funding to try to support the community. What I know that you have going for you in Brattleboro is a very generous community and a lot of providers and partners that want to do the right thing. But I think to your point, it also in some ways makes it easier for us to say that's the place where people should be. What we're looking at when we reduce the number of hotel rooms from 1,400 to 1,100, we're looking at a formula that's hopefully based on population and not just based on where the services are, although it's really important to have services near shelter so that people can get to a more stable place and hopefully get out of shelter and into more permanent housing. But I take your points and thank you for making them.
Well,
Thanks.
there's just one follow-up, is that the missing link here is the municipality. And so the motel owners must be making money, and clients are being funded, and social services are being funded, all the ones that you mentioned, and they're all doing their jobs. But the town, the police department, there's no mention of the strain that is placed on our town and our taxpayers. And so that would be the message that I would like brought back to the administration.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Just to add on to that, so at our last meeting a couple of weeks ago, we took a look at some data from our police department, and the number one location where responses were made to was the Quality Inn, which has been a provider in this program. You know, and I work for SEVCA. I work for, I actually used to be the HOP administrator. And the HOP program is the Housing Opportunity Program. It's a program that helps people avoid eviction and also get into safe and affordable housing. It also has other pieces that fund shelter. That's not what SEVCA does, but you know, so we help actually keep the numbers of people who are unsheltered down. And I can say from having seen the inside of that program and worked with clients with complex needs, it is very challenging to get folks into safe and affordable housing. We know that folks that are living in motels they're not having a great time. You know, these are not necessarily places that people want to be living. They're not necessarily safe places, as you can see by the cold data. And I know that the service providers connected with folks in those motels are also overburdened and under capacity, under-resourced in cases. And so working with folks with complex needs as a case manager is an extremely challenging thing. And I think that the point that you want to make, and I think I just want to kind of tack on to that point, is that the administration can do more to support service providers, to provide good, robust services to get people into safe and affordable housing and out of emergency housing, and to support municipalities who are experiencing increased burden. Because as Liz pointed out, it isn't just our public safety divisions, it's also public works, it's the parks department, it's the library. The library is actually one of the few locations in our community where everyone is welcome, everyone can receive services, everyone is treated with care and respect, and it's also a place where we've seen librarians whose trade is, you know, about information, become social service providers, and they've done a wonderful job, and I applaud them for it. But we need more resources in order to do that effectively. And so I just want to convey that to you.
Thank you.
Other board members, Peter?
Yeah. So I just want to back up with both Liz and Daniel have said. There's nothing new I can add to the conversation other than my voice weighing in and saying we would like to see more support for our systems that are being very well taxed and strained down here. So I don't need to repeat any of that. I agree with all of it.
Thank you. Richard?
I'm just wondering, in terms of case management support services, the people that are in shelters, there's a fairly solid system in place to do that now, and the people that are in the hotel system, are they accessing the same? Are they able to access similar kind of support services, or are those only support services provided by the state and not the local agencies? Is there an overlap? You know, what's?
Do you want to try that or defer to Sue?
Yeah, I can try, and then I'm happy to have Sue weigh in. So it is, I'll say it has ebbed and flowed throughout the pandemic in terms of who provides those resources and who are connected. So those in the motels, it is through coordinated entry that you would get a case manager to help you with housing. Although it's not just those entities, you can be working with a number of other organizations. So there isn't something formal in motels, although at times the state has helped support the local workers. So I'm trying to think, I think it was October of 23 that we tried to help provide additional support because we thought, okay, we have a program that's coming to an end and we really need to help these folks have a plan. And so doing assessments with them, who were they already connected to, who were they not connected to. But that was for a specific group. We aren't given in economic services. We don't have case managers except for a very small population. It's through our Reach Out program that have case managers. Otherwise, our role is to truly see, is someone eligible, and then find them a place to stay in Vermont if they're eligible for the program. But we have had, are there?
There are Thank you. Hey, Sue, sorry to... Would you mind going to the microphone if you want to speak? Otherwise, people at home won't be able to hear you.
So I'm Sue Graff. I live here in Brattleboro, but I also work for the Agency of Human Services. I'm the Field Services Director for this district, which is most of Windham County. So a piece of the program, which is funded through the Office of Economic Opportunity, which is another division of the Department for Children and Families, does fund hotel case managers. So Groundworks Collaborative, which is also the coordinated entry lead agency, does have on staff hotel case managers who serve all the clients who are in the hotel program, some of whom may be supported by other entities, but their role is specifically to support the hotel, GA hotel clients. So Groundworks also has case management staff and outreach staff and other staff that serve other homeless folks who may not be in the hotel program, but they do have a staff of hotel case managers. So
Thanks,
hopefully
Sue.
that was clear.
Appreciate that.
Just one follow-up.
Yeah, real quick.
And I'm not saying this to be flip. I don't want to be sarcastic, although I really don't. But when the 80 days runs out and the weather gets really cold, and we're going to have 200-plus people in Brattleboro with no place to go, safety's an issue. I mean, is our best option giving them a bus ticket to Florida? I mean, what else can we do for these people?
Yeah, so and I guess I would turn to the local resources and those that have connected with these folks about what are their plans and what have they explored. Is there a family member, a friend that they might be able to stay with? Do people want to move out of Vermont? That is something that can also be supported if that is a goal for people. And so it's really individualized to understand what would people like to do.
I think one of the things to remember is that this program, it's been threatened to end again and again, and it keeps getting extended. So I think, maybe some folks in the hotel or motel program might think it's not going to end. So it's really important for us to communicate that in public forums like this. We're reaching out to partners and providers and to the clients in the hotels and motels to say, it's really serious this time. You've got 80 days. So hopefully people are making plans. It's really hard for us to predict how many people will be unsheltered and will stay in the area when those 80 days run out. We're keeping tabs on it as best we can, but we really have no way of knowing. So we're trying really hard to connect people to options, to services, to supports, finding shelter beds, standing up new shelter beds. But there is a real turning point coming in mid-September where we'll know how many people actually are going to be unsheltered versus how many people do have an option to turn to.
Thank you. France, and then we'll go to the public.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Daniel. So in view of what you just said about mid-September, which is practically upon us, are you keeping track of how many days people are using now versus how many they'll have left on September 19th? And do we know with any degree of certainty what the numbers are likely to be in this area on September 19th? And then based on that, do you have advice for what we ought to be prepared for and how we should deal with the anticipated results?
Yes, so happy to answer. So we have been, per the law, we have to track now how many nights people have used. And we have in Brattleboro 58 households who have used every night in the month of July. So I only have a month's worth of data to be able to give you both. So we are trying to look and see the trend. And right now I'm, as of today, the data pool, I have 155 households that Economic Services is paying for. We always have some amount of households that are having to do self-pay because they have income. So that is, if they stayed trending, it would be about, just under 60 households that would hit their 80 days in mid-September.
And then the rest would presumably trickle in after that.
Correct.
Yeah. Liz, real quick.
So I'm struck by what you've been saying about the inability to reach some people, and they have complex needs, and they also have, free will. And so it seems like no matter what you do, there will be a certain population of people that can't be reached. And we're seeing that in all of this analysis that we're doing with the police and other people. So there needs to be a solution for the unreachable, complex need people. And I think it's a problem that goes beyond your hotel system, and it goes beyond all of our social service ability to help people. It's they're unreachable, and I'm sure you've experienced this. And do you have thoughts about what to do as a state?
It's a really big question. And you're right, we're the safety net. We're trying to catch the people who have nowhere else to go, but it's so many different systemic issues. It's a housing crisis, it's an affordability crisis, it's an opioid crisis, and the list goes on and on. We don't have enough mental health service providers. It's healthcare issues, it's chronic instability for a lot of people, and we can't help them unless they want to be helped. But what we have a duty to do is to keep on showing up until they do accept that help. So we keep trying. We keep providing shelter where we can to those who are eligible and those who want it. But there will be some people that we can't help. We just can't reach.
Thank you, Commissioner. Members of the public who would like to ask questions on this, and again, I'll just ask you to direct your questions to the board, and I'll mediate that. So, gentleman at the back. If you just state your name and where you're from.
John McClellan, Brattleboro. I worked 27 years at the welfare department in San Francisco.
Direct your question to this one.
Okay. I worked 27 years as a welfare fraud investigator, supervised a law enforcement unit in San Francisco, and we dealt with these problems all the time. So one thing I was going to suggest was you might reach out to San Francisco because they're kind of brilliant when it comes down to pulling down funding from federal agencies, whether it's the food stamp program. There's all kinds of money that might help your housing issues. But the thing that I wanted to ask is really that what I'm not hearing is that there's really any kind of supervision in the motel program. And as we've heard, there's all the police calls, a lot of our resources are going out there. And I have a friend who lives across the street from the Quality Inn, and he brings food over to somebody that lives in the motel there. And what he sees is that, people are subletting the rooms. People are, getting high in the rooms, and that's not the purpose of it. So probably there needs to be kind of a little bit more, oversight of what's going on in the motels, and maybe that might check some of the bad behavior and reduce the need for the fire department to go out there and do an emergency call or whatever. So again, I'm not hearing that there's any kind of formal supervision. I've heard there's some case managers that work with people sometimes, but you're paying all this money to the motel owner, and it's all our tax money. And he's not doing anything. So that's my point.
Thank you. So a question about oversight.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. The other communities are struggling with this. We are struggling with this. That's one of the problems of using a private business to provide social services. We only have so much control over the hotels, but you are right. The hotels should be held accountable. We want a safe place for people to stay. And it's, no picnic, I think, as was brought up earlier, to have to live in a place with a whole lot of people with complex needs and some engaged in illegal and otherwise dangerous behavior. So to hold the hotels to account, I think, is important. The town of Rutland, the city of Rutland are doing that more. The town of Berlin, where I live, we have a hotel there where the municipal government has been more active in requiring the hotel to provide security and to provide higher standards. We've built into some of our contracts now the ability to hold back payment if conditions aren't acceptable in the hotels and motels. So we're trying to make improvements there for for more accountability and better conditions in the hotel. So there are some things that we could work on, and we appreciate you bringing that up, and that's something that we are willing to support on as well.
Thanks, Commissioner. I think I saw Daniel.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring up the eligibility criteria. So anytime I've ever, gotten housing, vehicle, anything
And
like that.
if you just address your question this way.
Sorry about that.
It's weird, I know.
It
but-
is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Anytime you get, housing, a vehicle, employment, you need to show a record of what you had done, in the past. Now, if you guys are taking information or whatever, what have you, right? If they're taking information or what have you, I don't see any reason why they can't request, a background check, have specific questions on a survey of what, where were you living? There needs to be more done. It sounds to me like I can get somebody pregnant, cancel my lease, and then move in. Even though I have income and my partner might have income, as long as I have a baby, I can have assisted living. That's what it sounds like. So also I wanted to bring up the fact that you said it's not fun to live in a motel. I personally know people that have lived in motels and had no problem with it. I know when I was a young man and I turned 18, I felt I was ready to move out of the house, and it turned out I was not. I was living in a vehicle behind the grocery store that I had worked at until I could afford a place to live. And I will tell you right now, I would have loved to stay at a motel. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly there's a spectrum of being unsheltered. Yeah. Commissioner, there's a question about sort of background checks and eligibility.
So we do have to determine eligibility. So if someone has income and they have resources, if you can pay for your own motel stay, you wouldn't be eligible if you have significant resources. And then also what caused you to be unhoused. So those are things that we are doing. Sorry, and I'm forgetting the other point that I wanted to make.
Background checks.
The background checks. We, the state, cannot do that. We have to serve everyone that comes to us, and they meet eligibility criteria. What I can say, though, is that we have motels and we work with shelters who have their own set of criteria on who they will house or will not be able to house, and does it work for their establishment.
Thank you.
I don't think
Sorry,
that's
would you
following
mind?
history.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'll take one more question, and then we're going to move on. Lady in the front.
Connie Klein. I'm on the Friends of the Library Board, so I'm just wanting to say, supporting what you, Elizabeth and Daniel, have said about the library has really become a day center for homeless people, and the library staff has been traumatized, are traumatized daily. There's been an overdose incident in the bathroom. The town now is funding, and I'm here to plead with you to continue funding a security guard for the library to be able to get people out of there at night and to keep the library as safe as possible. Still, with that, there are, our star is berated daily by the same homeless person. There are other staff members who have been threatened and are traumatized. You may lose staff because of that. It's not what they signed on to be a librarian, and they have had some training in how to, cope with this, but certainly it's not their area of expertise, and so they need a lot of support, and we are looking for ways to support them. And one is to encourage you to continue to provide a security person, and that is one example of how our town is having to spend more taxpayer dollars to provide safety for our library staff who are serving the homeless. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Klein. So we are about 30 minutes behind schedule at this point, and whilst this is a really important conversation, I really appreciate the time of the two presenters. We have other presenters lined up as well. I also want to make sure that we have ample time for discussion on the safety zones item, which will now be coming up at about 8:30. So I'm going to move us on. The next item on the agenda, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
The next item on the agenda is the Pleasant Valley Water Treatment Project change order and update. And I think somewhere in the room was Public Works Director Dan Tyler. Thanks for joining us, Dan. And so if you'd like to walk us through this.
Sure.
Thank you.
So we've reached a point in the project where we're at substantial completion about a month ago. So it's really exciting. Majority of the work is done. The contractor's working through a punch list of items, most of which are small, like touch-up paint, establishment of grass, little items. And there's some more substantial stuff, but in the last month, they've made it through about 60% of that punch list. There's still some remaining certifications we're waiting on, but it seems like we're working through stuff, and we're approaching the end. So this change order really is tying up a bunch of loose ends that have come up throughout the project. There's 10 items here. There are various changes that either increase the cost, increase the contract time. There's several credits here, and it's really work that came up that wasn't included in the contract. In some cases, it's stuff that we wanted to add to make the project, the building more efficient, use-wise. And then there's some substitutions for materials that were difficult to source, or, for cost savings, the contractor requested substitutions. So of the 10 items here, there's $9,092.53, and it also adds 37 days of contract time to the contract. Money-wise, the project's in good shape. This will be covered by the contingency, which is basically the difference in the funding limit and the contract cost. So there's about $350,000 remaining in contingency with the project. That we do expect. We really tried to wrap everything up in this change order, and weren't able to. There's some outstanding stuff that the contractor's still working on. We expect another change order to come through that is made up of some minor stuff, and then there's a couple larger change items that they're working on too. But in the end, we think we're in pretty good shape. We should be all set cost-wise. So I guess the ask is that we approve this change order of $9,092.53 and 37 contract days.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate that. Board members, could somebody make a motion? France?
I move that we approve change order number 6 for a sum of $9,092.53 and 37 contract days for various cost increases and credits related to the Pleasant Valley Water Treatment Facility upgrade.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? Elizabeth?
Hi, Dan. So you're telling us that this 9,000 blah, blah, blah amount is certainly well within the $350,000 in remaining contingency?
Correct, yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes. And I think you're also telling us that there will be additional change orders likely, and you're still expecting that the project will be completed on budget.
Right. We're going to be over contract costs, but we're going to be within our
yes.
funding limits.
Yes. Thank you. Very good. Other board members with questions? Members of the community with questions about this item? Okay, seeing none. Board, we've got a motion on the floor to approve change order number 6 for a sum of $9,092.53 and 37 credit contract days for various cost increases and credits related to the Pleasant Valley Water Treatment Facility upgrade. Any final discussion on that? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 5-0. Thank you so much.
Can I just add that 2 weeks from today, we're going to have a ribbon cutting ceremony at Pleasant Valley at 4 o'clock.
And my big question about that is, will that be a very large pair of scissors?
I don't know. Do you have one?
I mean, if we could make that happen, that would be great.
Okay, we'll work on it.
All right, thanks so much. All right, so next item of business is the quarterly financial report for FY24 through quarter 4. Finance Director Kim Frost, welcome. And so, Kim, if you want to just walk us through it.
Sure. So, in your backup, you'll see the unaudited Q4 report for fiscal year 24. So the revenues in this and expenditures in this report are for the fiscal year 24. So it's July 1, 2023 through June 30, 2024. The year is now complete, and the town's finances were within plan, except for the management of the ARPA funds. During the fiscal year, we transferred those ARPA funds into the general fund and transferred out that equivalent amount to the special projects identified by the board, which put revenues and expenses beyond the expected amounts. So I put a little table in here removing that so you can have a clearer picture of what the expenses were and where we landed after budget.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, you know what? I don't have the pages.
It's page 30.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
I
the
don't
first
have.
page.
I printed them separately. Sorry.
Thanks.
So, going into some of the expenses, our staffing, we performed on target with staffing costs coming in at 97.9% of budget. Management across all departments balanced the cost of overtime against staff vacancies really well. Some departments were over budget due to collective bargaining increases that were not budgeted for. The negotiations finished in June of 2023. We were set to, start July of 2023, fiscal 24. That's an awkward timing with contract negotiations. We have already set our contract negotiations for next time, which are for 2026. We will start in June of 2025 to be able to incorporate those contract negotiations within the budget that they will start. So at the close of the year, a few of the department expenses were over budget. One of the main drivers of this were all of the utilities went over budget within town buildings, like, electric, telephone, heating fuel. We just saw an increase in those expenses. The town manager's office and finance had one-time expenses in Q1 that led to these overages, so they were over every quarter, which we discussed. Human resources is over due to their advertising and their software license and personnel management expenses, which again, we had discussed another report, and we will take care of these, of reallocating those expenditures and making sure that the recurring and costs that are increasing year after year are reflected in future budgets. As we're seeing these increases more and more, we're going to be able to, review and analyze while planning for the FY26 budget. The police department expenditures trended high this year due to the unbudgeted private security expense and the new mandatory software upgrades that were unbudgeted in their budget. Fire department expenditures also exceeded budget for the fiscal year. They had unexpected vehicle maintenance, building utilities, and they also had software upgrade costs, which were the main drivers for that department. The general fund revenues, we didn't receive Q4 of the local option tax yet. I think I saw an email today come in at like 6 o'clock, so maybe you guys will have an email tomorrow and we'll see where that is. So it's hard to talk about revenues without getting that, but we look forward to the FY26 general fund budget process. From the data from prior budgets will be reviewed and analyzed to make more predictions, more precise predictions across all revenues and expenses. The utility fund, this is unaudited for the fiscal year also. The revenues for the utility fund were at 106. If you remember, when we discussed the utility fund, there was that $440,000 that did not come in, so it looked like that fund was in a deficit. We said it would come in this period. It's here. So when we come back with the utility budget, you're going to see that that's all going to even out now. Their expenses performed within budget at 92, almost 93%. They had a couple of drivers of some large expenses, which sludge removal had a big increase during the year. And that was unexpected, and again, the utility costs. Parking fund, this is unaudited for the financial report for the fiscal year. Revenues performed at 97% of budgets. Permits performed lower. They were at 79% of budget. That was much lower than we had budgeted for. And expenses were within budget at like 98%. As we know, we've adopted a new budget and a new fine and fee schedule. Those new rates will take effect in October, so we'll see how that affects the budget, in FY25. And then the grants and loans, those are both in there. The loan report has a balance of $4,074,682. And the grant report shows 28 active grants and 10 in the application process. And there is a list of all the town fund balances.
Great.
As of 6:30.
Thanks, Kim. Board, can I get a motion?
Yes.
Liz?
I move to accept the FY24 financial report through the fourth quarter as presented.
Great, thank you. Discussion on that motion. Hearing none. Discussion from members of the public. Mr. DeGray.
So my first question, Mr. Chairman, do you have a piece of paper that we don't have?
Do I have a piece of paper that you don't have? I couldn't possibly say. I've got a legal pad here.
Well, I don't know.
Are you referring to something specific?
Was there something that was given to you later on that wasn't in the packet?
I think you're going to need to be more specific.
I'm wondering if the finance director, I thought that she said it was in a paper, so she must be talking about this. Okay. I thought you had something I didn't have.
Okay, I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what the Q1 expenses are? You referenced that. And then can you tell me what the personal management expenses were in the Human Service Department? And then can you tell me, I think I saw in the Fire Department under revenue, they were projected at $80,000. It was only $30,000 that they brought in. Can you tell me why that delta was so large?
Your questions were very quick, and I didn't capture them all. I'm hoping that Kim did. Yeah, great. So, several questions about detail in the budget. Kim?
Okay. So the Q1 over budgets, that was finance and town manager. The town manager's office purchased a copier, which was about $12,000 in Q1. That copier expense hit all in that quarter, which threw them over budget back then. And in finance, we had a $5,000 software expense on old software that we're still using through the conversion of OpenGov. That was unbudgeted for. Human resources, personnel management, some of that is, I'd have to look 100%, but some is lawyers' fees if there's an arbitration or a grievance, if we need to call in another lawyer outside of our town attorney. And the fire revenue, if I remember correctly, I think it was the rental housing income was low. That's where I know for sure they didn't make that line.
Thanks, Kim.
You're welcome.
Other members of the public with questions about the Q4 financial report? Okay. Seeing none, we've got a motion on the floor to accept the FY24 financial report through quarter four as presented. Any final discussion on that? Okay. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. 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 That passes 5-0. Thanks so much, Kim.
Thank you.
Next item of business is the 250 Birge Street property acquisition. We'll do this. We'll take a short break afterwards, and then we'll get to safety zones. Brian Banner, Zone 8 Administrator, thank you so much for joining us. If you would like to walk us through this.
Sure. Brattleboro and the Vermont River Conservancy have been working for quite a number of years now to complete the 250 Birge Street floodplain restoration. Throughout those years, there's been an understanding that the town would take ownership of the property or was willing to do so. That has never been made official, and now the River Conservancy has requested that the town actually officially move forward and agree to take over the property. If the town does so, the property is going to be subject to a number of easements to make sure that it's conserved and that it's managed in conformance with a series of easements calling for low-impact recreation and channel migration. And should the board approve this, there'll be a closing in September. The governor will be here to sign off on the easements on the property, and the transfer would take place at the same time.
Great. Thank you, Brian. John, would you like to add to
that? I just wanted to show my gratitude to Brian for this is a culmination of an amazing amount of work that he's put into not only doing a fantastic floodplain restoration that's going to be of great benefit to the town, especially downstream on the Whetstone, but it also could result, if you approve this, in a new 12-acre park for the town. So it's a great gratitude to you for this.
Thanks. Thanks, John. Can I have a motion, please? Elizabeth.
I move to move forward with accepting the conveyance of the 250 Birge Street restoration floodplain subject to river corridor and conservation easements held jointly by the Vermont River Conservancy, the Department of Environmental Conservation, and the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board.
Thank you.
I would also like to speak to it.
Wonderful. Go right ahead.
I want also to add my congratulations and thanks to Brian and the planning department. This project has been in the works since Tropical Storm Irene. It's a wonderful project that was very complex to get approved, and working with a partner that we had, a great partner in the Vermont River Conservancy. And it's just a great project. If you haven't seen it, you should go see the wonder of it all. And I thank you.
Great. Thanks, Liz. Other board members? Okay. I appreciate your work on this as well. It's been a multi-year project. I'm assuming it's already helping with flood mitigation downstream. So that's wonderful. Members of the public with questions on this item?
Where is it?
That's a wonderful question. I'm not going to make you stand up and ask that over the microphone. 250 Birge Street is like if you're going along Williams Street, along the river, and you look along the brook, and you look across the other side, you'll see a big empty space, and that's what it is. And so it's restoring this floodplain so that instead of having the river be a tunnel that funnels water downstream, it's able to absorb it and reduce flood impact.
Tell them how to get there.
How to get there? Yeah, oh, Lord Almighty. Depends where you're coming from.
So you can't get there from here.
Exactly.
Yeah. If you're on Birge Street, instead of turning down a right to go towards Elliott Street Bridge, continue straight on. And when you come to the end of it, there'll be a small parking area. You can go through the gate, and there'll be a parking area in the park itself.
And dog walking is allowed. Responsible dog walking is allowed.
Yes.
Very good. Okay, so any other questions from members of the public? Okay. Yes, if you come to the microphone and introduce yourself.
I'm Callie Bailey, and I live in the neighborhood. Thank you, Brian, for creating that beautiful park. I'm concerned because it is a beautiful park, and it's wide open. There's already been litter that we have found down there, and I'm concerned that if you move the people from the Flat Street area, they'll probably come to our neighborhood. And as you know, Brian, our neighborhood is in real dire straits. Mm-hmm. I hope you can continue to help us with that. Thank you.
I think you heard, and I don't know if, Brian, if you want to speak to that.
So one of the benefits of the town taking this over is our ban on camping comes into effect. And as we know, that's not always followed, but we do enforce it pretty vigorously, and it's an ongoing battle. But if we own it, we'll be able to act directly and move campers on.
Thank you. Okay, other members of the public with questions? Okay, seeing none. Board, we've got a motion, to move forward with accepting the conveyance of the 250 Birge Street restored floodplain subject to river corridor and conservation easements held jointly by the Vermont River Conservancy, the Department of Environmental Conservation, and the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. Any final discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that passes 5-0. It is...
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks so much, Brian. It is 8:04. We're going to take a 6-minute break and we'll come back at 8:10. No, it is 8:10, so we're just going to come back from our break. The next item on our agenda is safety zones and related interventions. And I think, John, you're going to kick us off with that?
Yep, I'll try to get you all started with this. And this discussion tonight is part of a lot of other things that the town is working on with respect to community safety, and public health. This tonight is a focus on what you may be able to do at the municipal level. No motion is requested tonight. We're just looking for feedback. There are a number of policy questions on page 58 of your backup materials. We're really trying to stick to this idea of the behaviors that we're hearing that people find unacceptable in the community, trying to get an understanding of what those are that the select board might like us to focus on. Then also, in what locations are you interested in trying to address these behaviors? And then finally, what types of interventions would you like us to develop for you, some possibilities of how to address them? Because of National Night Out, we don't have the police chief with us tonight. So I've asked the police chief and the assistant police chief to join us at your next meeting on August 20th to address downtown safety from a law enforcement perspective. Tonight, we're focusing on the municipal side of things, and overall, the question before the board is about developing a concept for safety zones in Brattleboro, which was one of your priorities for the year. And so that is about addressing undesirable behaviors that are unsettling the community and impacting public safety and quality of life. So in the backup materials, there are listed out a number of behaviors that are potentially ones that the select board might want staff to focus on. We proposed a way of thinking about locations, where you might want to address behaviors. And finally, we suggested 3 high-level interventions that you could consider asking us to develop further: providing more services to people exhibiting undesirable behaviors, developing a communications plan around these behaviors, and finally, the potential for a stepped-up municipal ordinance that would expand our abilities to address certain undesirable behaviors in certain areas. So the priority questions for you are on, the policy questions for you are on page 58. We do have Cassandra Holloway here with us today and some members of the Youth Council. And I wanted to invite Cassandra to come up and share with us a presentation that she gave at the Public Safety Enhancement Team's Symposium in April, where we learned a lot about how youth are perceiving safety in Brattleboro. And so that was why we wanted to see if Cassandra would join us today. And maybe if we turn things over to you, Cassandra, could you introduce us to our guests tonight?
Yes, I'll let everybody introduce themselves. Everybody will have a chance to talk to all of you. We have 5 of our youth council members here today. I'm Cassandra Holloway. I'm with the Building a Positive Community. We serve Brattleboro and its surrounding towns to address substance use, harms of substance use, as well as youth empowerment work, and that includes the youth council. So I'm going to start letting everybody else speak, and then we'll be here for questions.
Hi, my name is Leo. My pronouns are he, him. I'm from Brattleboro, and I'm a rising 10th grader. I'm a member of the Brattleboro Area Youth Council, and the Youth Council is a group of youth that meets about once a month to try to make our community better. And our main issues are community safety, shared power, and career interest. And today we're here to talk to you about community safety. So yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jamel. I'm a junior in high school. I'm also part of the youth council, and I will be presenting our map that we made during a community safety training. We'll get there.
Thank you.
So we have different like popular spots where youth like to congregate. We have green areas, which are like good places that we like think are positive places, and then we have red areas, which we think are like not so like great places for youth to hang out due to like a variety of issues, including substance abuse. Note that 8 out of 10 safe spaces require registration or other forms of like accessibility to like gain access to that. So like whether it be wealth or transportation, there's still that extra need to be able to access those spaces. And so our goal, I'll let Alex talk about.
Thanks, Jamal. We're also putting it up on the big screen here for those that want to see it. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Alex. I am a sophomore at Brattleboro Union High School. Our goal with this map is to work with other youth as well as the town to help create more green spots and less red spots.
My name is Maddie. I am a rising junior at the Union High School, Brattleboro Union High School. We're inviting you in the fall to join us in a listening panel where we will talk about this map and other downtown safety issues that we feel like is an issue. And this will be a time where we can hear from other students and what they feel like is an issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is AJ. I live in Brannan, but I attend BUHS, and I will be a sophomore this coming year. Today, I attended a meeting with my friend Jamel here, and it was considering a lot of like youth issues all over Vermont, and I recall there being a lot of mentions of wanting to hear youth voice, wanting to hear youth talk in all these big discussions considering youth. And yet I, being included with talking with these youth, I know that there is youth voice. There's been youth voice, and what there really has been an absence of is adult listening and having space where adults and youth can coexist and simply have discussion with each other, where both can listen and converse about problems that we may have experienced or seen firsthand that consider and concern the both of us. And so that is really why we are inviting you to share space with us later in the fall. And so we do hope you will appear and also consider when holding space to make it more accessible for youth, hopefully, in the future. Because we do want to be involved in these spaces considering youth. We want to be there. We want to be involved. We want to help with problems, be part of the solution, share our input, and just add to the discussion, or at the least, be there. Thank you.
Thank you. Cassandra, do you have anything you want to add to all of that?
Yeah, so I think also the reason the Youth Council was kind of created is to make sure that not just the Youth Council members are part of the conversation, so that we include all youth as much as we can, as much So they are representing, kind of like town reps, they're representing youth. And we have quite a diverse group of youth. We have 14, potentially 15 starting in September. And many of them have been with us for 3 years. It was created by youth, by the way. I think there's 7 members still existing from the creation of the Youth Council. So we're ready. We spent a lot of time creating the foundation of it, and now we're ready to actually be involved in making change. So again, it's community safety is one of the topics. Shared power in schools is another topic, and career interest opportunities is the third area that they'll be wanting to focus on.
Great. Thank you so much. So thank you to Leo, Jamel, Alex, Maddie, and AJ. I think that you guys are going to have some feedback to give us about behaviors, about locations, about interventions. And so please feel free to chime in with that feedback in a moment. So, John?
Yeah, I would just turn over to you, Daniel, and if you want to step through these policy questions, it would be great to hear more from folks here in the room.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, board members, this agenda item currently has no motion. We have a number of questions to consider. I would like us to kind of try and move methodically through these questions, but I also know that sometimes we may need to be more freewheeling. So the first question that we have before us is the types of behaviors that we want to address in publicly accessible spaces. And so I'll invite comment on that.
I want to.
Excuse me, there are 2 more chairs if you guys want to sit down.
Are there? Yeah, there's chairs.
There's one right there. One right
Oh, yeah, you can take this.
Yeah, we have an injured board member who is using it as a footrest.
But I'm not. Well, just first of all,
1 second.
Oh, sure.
Thanks for pointing that out.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're thinking about behaviors. We're thinking about behaviors that we want to address in publicly accessible spaces. And Liz, you'd like to say something?
Yes. Well, first, I want to thank Peter for championing this issue, and I support it wholeheartedly. And I think that the list on page 56 of 70, I'm in favor of all of those behaviors as being regulated in whatever fashion is deemed appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Other board members with comments?
Yes.
Franz?
I think, well, some of these on the list are judgment calls. I mean, I'm not in favor of littering, nor am I in favor of smoking, but I don't think they necessarily need to be focus of our discussion. So, it's some things are going to happen, and I think we should also try to be clear on what the really important aspects of it are. The list as a whole is very good. I mean, we don't want these things happening in public downtown, for sure. But I also think, there are certain things that are absolute and others that are more relative, and we should keep that in mind.
Great, thank you, Franz. Other board members with comments? Richard?
Yeah, the list of acceptable behaviors, I think it would be good to prioritize that at some point, and people,
This is a good time to do that.
Yeah, and hear what, and I guess we will hear what other people have to say in terms of priorities. So, but I think it's important to have a hierarchy.
Are there things on there that you think are less important?
Less important.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, as Franz said, I think they're all important, but less important, using animals to intimidate others,
That's less important.
I hate to
Well,
pull out
besides-
things, lighting fires. I only say they're less important because some of the other things are so much more important. But I don't know. It's really hard to put it in to say less important. I don't know. I just don't feel comfortable that way.
Okay, fine. As I said at the beginning, this is a topic right now that has no motion, that we're trying to give some feedback on. I think what I'm looking for is some clear consensus around something that we can pass along to town administration to take some action on. Peter?
Yeah. So all of these things are on this list because at some point in time they've been brought up to me numerous times. All right. So no matter, we can all categorize this list from the worst offense to the least worst offense, but I think they're all offensive to at least to the people that I've spoken with, and not necessarily, everybody has seen this, but most of us have, and so I think like the list myself, I would like to see that sort of just stay in context and as a whole as presented, and then kind of work through the list of prioritizing how we as a municipality roll out and roll out an action towards these things once we see them. And of course, judgment calls by the people who have to do it, which is our police department, would be the first and foremost. But I think what we're trying to do is create some municipal action. I know that these next few meetings around this, there's going to be a lot of conversation, but this is the first step to sort of something actionable that we can roll out that will include everything. And this is something I've been working on for well over a year prior to even being on the board, and now it's here. So this is action. I love these kids, Cassandra. I love these kids. So I mean, they're doing great work. Gives me great hope. So thank you guys for coming out. Thank you for that map. It was when town manager showed me that in a meeting that we had yesterday. It was funny how I don't know that you knew that any of this work was going on, but to see how it just overlapped with what I've been trying to do and the rest of this board has been trying to do. So it was heartening and disheartening all at the same time to see it.
Can you read the list?
I'm actually about to do that, so thank you.
Can we project it?
So, you done?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this list of potentially unacceptable behaviors, it's in backup material that is available online. Usually we have paper copies for folks to access as well. I'm guessing maybe not quite enough today. Would you mind, Patrick? Thank you. I'll read it. Patrick's going to make some copies and we'll distribute them. Just 1 second. So use of intoxicating...
How many copies shall I?
All right, that copying budget's going to be through the roof. Yeah, it's John's vacation gone.
Good thing we got that.
All right. So, potentially unacceptable behaviors on this list are use of intoxicating beverages or drugs, urination and defecation, blocking pedestrian traffic, damaging property, using profane, loud, or abusive language, verbal disturbance or loud music, lighting fires, use or preparation of tobacco products, use or preparation of cannabis products, leaving trash on the ground, face-to-face solicitation for money, physical aggression or harming others, waving a fist or threatening others, invading personal space of others, hate speech, using animals to intimidate others, leaving animals tethered and unattended, appearing unconscious, showing signs of severe intoxication, holding, using, or disposing of a needle, exchanging items with, quotes, customers, storing belongings with a carry, storing belongings beyond a carry load, nudity or exposure, sexual harassment or sexual conduct, participating in encampments, gathering in groups, and then other question mark. And I'd like to speak to these. So thanks for doing that, Patrick. And I'll just give you second to pass those around. And so this list here of potentially unacceptable behaviors includes many, many, many things on it that are already illegal, that already have penalties, that already have enforcement to some extent, which is related to the judgment calls of public safety officers. I would want to support most of the things on this list. The things that give me pause are things that I suspect are really legal gray areas. So using profane, loud, or abusive language, I wonder how protected that is as speech. It differs from hate speech, right? I'm not saying that hate speech is okay, because that is a whole different thing. Face-to-face solicitation for money, I think there's a little nuance there, so I probably want to hear a little bit more about how that is defined. Gathering in groups, I feel like that is a little gray as well. Maybe it depends on what the group is up to as to whether or not that's acceptable or not. And then I guess I have a question about exchanging items with customers, in quotes, if somebody could speak to what that means to them. So I don't know, John, if that was...
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, these were just examples of things that we've heard people mention, Daniel, and I think if there are certain ones of these that you'd like us to focus on with potential interventions, then we would develop that out. So, for example, if you wanted us to come back with an enhanced ordinance to address some of these things, we'd probably have to define some of those out in detail. Mm-hmm. It would be helpful to hear from members of the public or the youth council regarding their thoughts on whether those bother people or whether they're okay. And maybe some of these things are okay. I don't know.
Great, thanks. Liz?
So upon reflection, there's a couple of things that I think are not appropriate
to be on the list.
The use or preparation of tobacco products and the use or preparation of cannabis products, I think we'd have a rough time legally with that. And also gathering in groups, that could be anything. And storing belongings beyond a carry load. Those are the four things that I think would be problematic on this list.
Great, thank you. So what I've been doing as we've been sharing this information is tracking the ones that people are not so sure about. So why don't I read the list of the ones that people seem they're actually in consensus on.
Before you do that,
yes.
If I could just say that the idea was first to identify things that bother people in the community, not whether we could enforce them through an ordinance. There may be other ways you might want to address these behaviors, but if they bother you, if they're upsetting the community, let's start with an understanding of, yes, these things are upsetting us. There may not be anything we can do legally to address them, but there may be things that we can do to influence that behavior through design, through messaging, through other techniques. And so that I didn't want you to cut off the conversation on that. Just think a little bit more broadly about what interventions we might want to use. Mm-hmm. Sorry, Daniel.
Yeah, that's okay. So,
if I could,
go ahead.
Yeah. So I think all of these, some of these are self-explanatory in definition, and we already know what urination and defecation mean, so we don't need to paint the picture, tell the story behind that, right? So gathering in groups, those three words just in a sentence don't mean anything, but we all know what they mean and why they're on here, and when you put it in context of the gathering in groups that we talk about in large, which we can just point to the parking lot on Flat, right? And I think that's that is the target, what's happening outside the Holstein building. I think putting those three words in that context changes what those three words mean. So I want to keep that in front of us. Okay, the storing belongings behind a carry load and the use tobacco products, fine. You want to pull those off the list? That's fine. The use or preparation of cannabis products, as far as I'm aware, at least as it's been explained to me, you can't have an open container of beer and be walking down Main Street and drinking it. I think the same is true of smoking marijuana on Main Street. So, I mean, in that is already a law that's on the books. I know that I have walked down Main Street and have had, marijuana hitting me in the face as somebody in front of me has been smoking it. Whereas your choice, whatever, I don't personally care, but if the community cares, then yeah, I guess I do care.
Okay. Board members with other comments on this particular question, and then we'll hear from other folks in the room. Yep.
I think it would be worth explaining somewhat the larger context here and what the concept of safety zones means in this discussion, which I don't know to what extent people either here or on Zoom have become familiar with that idea. So something that's been confusing to me about safety zones is that you're identifying things, some of which, maybe most of which, are already illegal. So you're not supposed to be doing this stuff anywhere because it's against the law. So what are we talking about doing now that's different? And to me, there may be some areas where there could be a new ordinance. There are restrictions on that. We can't do everything that you may think we can do. But there may be some areas where there would be a new law that is passed. But the big question here is enforcement, because a lot of this stuff is already against the law, but for various reasons, some of which are very good, it's either difficult or just impractical to enforce every instance of everything that's on this list. So anyway, the safety zone idea is that there would be places in town that here's how I understand it anyway. There would be places in town where we would really, really say, don't do this stuff. And it's like school zones and at the Boys and Girls Club and Newton Youth Theater. And I can think of a lot of places where, for a number of reasons, whether social, cultural, or economic, we might say, hey, we're really serious about this, and deploy additional resources to address the issues in ways that have an impact on the street. So that's what the safety zones are about in my mind, and but it's almost impossible for me to divorce this discussion from the questions of enforcement that I understand we'll get to 2 weeks from now, but it's an integral part of the discussion for me.
Right, and so, as I said at the beginning, what we're going to try and do is walk through these actually quite discrete questions, and I think when you talk about enforcement, that is actually in some ways related to interventions, right? There's a behavior happening in a place. What happens to intervene with that behavior? Sometimes it's law enforcement. Other times it could be other kinds of interventions. Let's hear from the public about their thoughts on potentially unacceptable behaviors. You want to go real quick?
No, I just have a question.
Go ahead.
I really want to hear from the students.
Yes, I was just inviting.
We're going to have a chance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, they are part of the public.
But can I ask them a question, or?
You can, yeah. I mean, let's try. This is like a big unwieldy agenda item that I'm trying to kind of keep
Well, I think
focused.
This is a golden opportunity to hear,
Yes.
the world from their perspective.
Hello, Youth Council, members of the public. Thank you for coming. Welcome. And so perhaps you have some thoughts that you'd like to share with us about unacceptable behaviors in this community.
Are you asking for us to give our opinions on this list or
That's a
add
good starting
more?
place. Yeah, if you think that there's stuff on this list that's like really important, or you think there's stuff on this list that isn't important, that's helpful for us to know. If you want to add some stuff that isn't on there, by all means.
Go back to this question.
Yes, which is what types of behaviors do you want to address in publicly accessible spaces?
For me, one that's really important for me is right at the top of the list, use of intoxicating beverages or drugs. Just because, like, at least from a young person's perspective, it's very, like, it's slightly frightening to walk past someone in the street who is very clearly not in their right mind because of whatever substance they're using. And, you know, I don't really think that it, yeah, I think just that one is very important to me. It feels like something that bothers me the most and makes me feel the most unsafe. And at least with, like, all of these, the main issue that makes them red spots is because of the use of, like, just drugs.
Got it. Thank you. Other members of the youth council, and then we'll go to the slightly less youthful council.
Yeah. So we as a youth council had a green up day. I was there along with 2 other students, and I was picking up trash on the ground, and I found a little white, like, peg in the ground that almost looked like the things that you tap into, like, the ground to hold, like, a bouncy castle from blowing away. And then I pulled it out, and it was a heroin needle, which was stuck into the ground. I mean, I'm fine. I was wearing gloves, but, you know, that was pretty scary. We left it on the ground, and we're just kind of looking for someone to deal with it, because, you know, we had just flimsy plastic bags and flimsy plastic gloves, but, you know, that was a little bit scary, because, you know, my parents are always like, don't touch needles, and I did, and I didn't even mean to. And then, like, along with that, we found many packages of Narcan, and, like, I couldn't tell if they were open or not. I don't know what an open container of Narcan looks like. I guess that really doesn't have an issue with it, but the, you know, accidentally grabbing a heroin needle wasn't a good thing to happen.
Yeah.
I think you also have
Thank
a lot
you.
of like litter to like the cigarette litter like in the youth areas.
Yeah, right in front of the youth council building, we had like this plastic bag about this big, and we had like 3 of them filled up halfway with cigarette butts, and one of them was completely filled up just from right in front of the youth council building. And then another one was filled up a lot from the New England Youth Theater, private property. We found lots of those, and then there was one area that we didn't even go into just because, like, you could see there was a lot going on there with, like, needles and cigarettes, and there was a pair of pants, so, yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
so
Thank you.
Can I quickly respond to that?
Yeah.
I mean, so I think if we're looking at safety zones around schools, we can't use nicotine products, and I think if you're going to keep anything with that, probably you say nicotine products, because I think sometimes people don't think of vaping as falling into that tobacco product. But I think if we're looking at safety zones, I think that is very valid to say we don't want people smoking or vaping in front of places that young people are congregating or littering in those spaces. So I don't think you can necessarily do it in the town unless you're going to put ordinances in around so many feet from a building, which is some towns do. And again, to the enforcement, that can be very difficult. But I think with these, there is that just being able to explain to people why these are areas that we're trying to keep these behaviors away from versus the whole town, that we want our young people to feel like the places that they are congregating are being cared for by all adults in the community.
Great. Thanks, Cassandra. Other members of the Youth Council that want to give us some feedback?
I just had some thoughts on the participating in encampments. I was just wondering if we did enforce like not participating in encampments, where these people would go. As we know, there's a large homeless population, and the shelters are completely filled. And so it's kind of hard for these people to go find a place to like be. So I guess my question is, where would they go?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, you know, we have a no camping on public property ordinance. We have a compassionate police department and a compassionate fire department that works with people and really focuses on health and safety and understands the shelter limitations in our community and understands the housing limitations. And so I think that, as Peter kind of said earlier, there are judgment calls about each of these things that, you know, I think our professionals need to be left some room to actually make judgment calls. Thank you for your feedback, and we'll hear more from you as we go along, I think. Members of the public that would like to be recognized, and I'll go by people who haven't spoken yet. I think Sue, and then person at the back with glasses, and then person in the white jacket, and then Daniel.
Sorry, I've been sitting too long. Susan Belleville from Brattleboro. One of my big issues, I'm a property manager for a large building on Elliott Street.
Susan, you're being asked to speak up to the best of your ability. I know that when we have the AC running, so you're welcome to come in a little closer. Yeah, everyone's doing their best.
I'm sorry, I'm not speaking up loud enough? Oh, okay.
You can speak a little louder.
So, I property manage a large building on Elliott Street in Brattleboro, and I am constantly trying to keep my 17 families safe, as well as the businesses feeling that their customers and their employees are going to be safe. We're actually discussing having an alarm system throughout all the commercial spaces, so that if any one business is having a difficult time with a potential person in the building, that they can notify somebody else to get help for them instantly, versus having to wait for the police department. Not that the police department isn't fast responding, but sometimes the best intervention is somebody else coming in to keep people safe. I have families with children, and I am forced to ask people to move along. People who are being victimized by others, human trafficking, is happening right in front of my building with these children right here. There are other children who live downtown who shouldn't be subjected to any of that. I see them walking the dogs for the families. I see them coming home from school, and they're constantly being assailed by all of these bad behaviors. I have made it a point to ask people to move along and to stay away from the buildings that I can control and manage. My problem is I've got a very small ledge in which I can ask people to get away, because the municipal sidewalks, they won't leave. They won't move on. I can only make them leave when they're standing on the steps or hanging on the fence or defecating and urinating in the little garden area in front of the office space for the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance. I really need some help with people also asking others to move along and get them away from the areas I consider should be safe zones, doorways and the sidewalks that people access all the time. I watched the other day, I was down there in the evening, it was around the 1st of the month, and I saw this elderly couple get out of their car. They were slow. They were having, I won't say mobility issues, because they seemed to be cheerfully headed for a restaurant for dinner. It was around 6:30. 2 people walked up to them and asked them for money. They couldn't quietly go to dinner, an elderly couple, without being accosted by somebody wanting money. I've sat in my car and had people come up to me and say, "Hey, and I said, "Get away from me. I'm not going to give you any money." If you want some help, I'll provide you with resources, but I'm not going to give you any money. I really, really, really would like to see the downtown area pull together and work on trying to solve these issues so that we can have a healthy town, so that people are not afraid to come in and can go to dinner peacefully. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. Gentleman at the back.
Hi, my name is Ben Solling. I'm an architect. I moved to Brattleboro 2.5 years ago. I'm excited about the new train station that's coming. It's part of the reason that I moved here. I work all over the Northeast, so it's nice to have access. And my dream was to, I have a house that's just this side of the highway, and my dream was to open an office downtown that I could walk to every day. I have a background in urban planning, and walkable communities are really important to me. So I'm at a point where I need to hire some people, so I started looking into opening an office downtown. And that's why I'm here now, because I started to discover all the problems and it doesn't make sense for me to put up with the hassle. It's easier for me to open an office in New York, frankly, and let people work remotely. I'm not going to do that yet. I really hope that downtown gets to the point that I can get some younger people to come and live here and work in my firm. I think that we could be a great asset for the community. So my job is solving problems. So I have some ideas that I want to kind of throw out. I think that the parking garage really has to be solved. I think it would be great if there was like a police substation there, but even better, I think it would be great if we could get the enterprise car rental to relocate to the parking garage so that you have some sort of activity. And also it would be easy to walk to from the train station. So I think that would be an asset for the community. And I think having some sort of private investment in that area will help activate it in a positive way. I have lots of other ideas, and if anybody knows how I can get involved, I'd love to. And my final thought was, when you said compassionate policing, I thought of the Andy Griffith Show, and how I've never seen a policeman on foot in Brattleboro, and that maybe it would be sort of nice if we had an Andy Griffith in town walking around and helping people. And I think the police here probably know the bad people more than they know the good people, and I think it'd be great if we could, go back to less confrontational policing and more like community-friendly policing. So that's my contribution.
Thanks, Vince. So I think there was a person in the white jacket that was going to speak next.
Hi. My name is Sandy Panucci. I live at Morningside Commons. And at first, I just wanted to say I'd love to see the map. I can't really see the map that you put together. Or maybe you could read the areas that you designated as being the red areas and the green areas, and maybe we could add to that as a group. That's one thing. And the other is I think we all know the problems. I'd love to hear some brainstorming on solutions for things. One maybe very unpopular idea that has occurred to me, and I think it's done in other countries, is that you designate one park in your town where people can sleep at night, and you have a presence there, a police presence there, so that it's a safe place for those people to sleep too, instead of like every park, every doorway, so you have a designated space. If you're going to help solve the problem before you can resolve it and live with it, then I think we have to think creatively about how we might do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandy. And Patrick has put the map on the screen again.
Yeah, I know. It's like, could somebody just quickly?
We didn't expect it to be so popular.
Well, I'm curious
So-
what you've designated
Yeah.
as being unsafe.
I don't know if we have time or do you.
Maybe you want to kind of give us a quick walkthrough of it. I'm trying to keep us focused and move through.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe folks could take a picture with their phones.
Yeah, maybe.
And it really helps
When
to take
you-
a picture with your phone.
When you have your meeting notes, do you guys have attachments that you could attach this to it, maybe?
Sure.
That would probably be helpful.
If we can include it in our minutes, we will do so.
that's-
You want to like just give us a summary of the locations that were like the biggest concerns?
You want to address the reds?
And we're going to move on to locations in a second anyway.
Should someone in the microphone speak it while I?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have like go through the entire thing.
Just in general.
Just
So-
the places that the biggest concerns for you.
You want me to?
Yeah, go ahead. Jamal is one of the people who created it.
Okay, so we marked off some areas near we marked off some areas in the middle and high school, most importantly the bathrooms. We marked off Circle K and Walgreens. We had the parking lot down here
On Flat Street.
on Flat Street, and then I guess we had the Harmony parking lot and then one other parking lot on High Street. And then we had the transportation center and
Yeah, there's some places that sold like promoted substances like cannabis or tobacco products was also mentioned, like Walgreens. There's also, I just want to give a shout out to The Void because what was actually read, and I just found out that they stopped selling their paraphernalia and their vaping products. So they might be going from red to green because they also were selling skateboard and doing piercings, which a lot of our young people wanted to access that space but did not feel it was youth friendly. So we have these youth friendly youth are welcome signs with that have the same logo. Those are businesses that we felt youth felt really safe in. So if you get one of those, that means so we might actually be going to the Void, which is kind of exciting because that was one of the places that we did not feel had met that criteria. So
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's a good segue to locations. So we talked a little bit about behaviors. John and I were captured.
Are we moving on, or are we?
Would you mind letting me finish?
Well, I asked you a question. Are we moving on, or was I skipped?
So we're going to move on to locations.
So I was skipped because I can make it super quick.
Would you like to speak right now?
I absolutely would love to speak right now. That's a great one. Okay, so I think it's super obvious to see.
Daniel?
Yes, Daniel Bransford, that's my name. I think it's super obvious to see if we look at the list, gathering in groups. Typically, you might see a group of 6 people going out to dinner, hanging out. Anything more than 6, you start to see an identity of that group, whether it's like this group here or like LGBT plus group, something like that. A protest, you can identify a group. It's very easy to see. A group of people doing drugs is a group of people doing drugs. So I wanted to say every single thing on this list I have personally witnessed since April up until this date. I don't know really what you guys are confused about as far as there was something like, I don't know, basically every single thing on here I think is very obviously a problem and needs to be addressed. There was an ordinance put into place to increase the price of the parking at the parking garage. Now, I would like to know, specifically referring to this list, since every single thing on this list is done in that parking garage, what is going to be done with that money that the ordinance is demanding? So, and I also would like to know if you guys think that is a justified and a fair increase of price, seeing as literally the quality and services have gone down.
Okay. I'm going to move us on to locations because this is, as I said, a pretty big agenda item with no clear motion. So I'm trying to get us to a point where we have actionable feedback for the town manager and the town administration. So you heard the parking business, I don't think is exactly germane to this. I understand about the concerns around activity, and I think that is germane. And so as we've already kind of talked about these behaviors, I think John has got some helpful information.
Yeah, I think this feedback is really helpful for us to try to start to classify some of these as priorities. I heard the drugs, if that's something that the board is thinking, I can focus on that first. What can we really throw at that? Some of the other behaviors maybe a little bit less of a concern. But in general, I'm hearing from the community, there's concern about all of these things, so maybe we can address them somehow. The next question would really be, what locations are you seeking to influence these behaviors at?
Right. And so let's move on to that. In the memo, it kind of speaks to a number of locations.
Would you like me to read them?
No, I'm okay. I'll keep going if you don't mind. So, like, originally, this was a discussion that began really about, like, a corridor around Flat Street that had a number of, like, youth organizations present in, right? So that was, principally we were hearing from the Boys and Girls Club and the New England Youth Theatre folks. In the memo, it also speaks to areas in our community outside of that zone that are also a concern. So Plaza Park, which is the park by the Holstein Building opposite the museum. Elliott Street has been mentioned. The Transportation Center actually isn't on that list, but clearly that's an area still of concern. Pliny Park, Gibson Aiken Center, the Harmony Lot, Brooks Memorial Library. And it's also mentioned here the South End Plaza and the North End Plaza, which are the shopping plazas where Hannaford's and Market 32 are. So, board members, that's like a little list for you there. You want to say anything about it or add anything to it or subtract anything from it?
Well, there's this list of 7 items.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And that's a lot. But to that, I would, and they're all, I think the case could be made that they're child-centric. But also, I would add gas pumps and ATMs as locations where citizens might be particularly vulnerable.
Okay. Richard.
I think it would be really helpful to me if I heard from the students about if they wanted to walk, if you go from the high school to the youth theater, would you walk that distance? And if you wouldn't walk that distance, or what goes through your mind if I say to you, would you ever walk that route?
Okay.
We can use the Boys and Girls Club, which is a little bit more probably.
I would say I wouldn't willingly walk there alone. If I was going alone, I would rather contact any adult, like trusted adult, to give me a ride. If I have maybe like a group of friends, if we're going from the high school to downtown, I'd feel safer. But going alone, I would not do that. Just like, I do trust myself, but like downtown, there's like unknown variables, or like on the way there, and just being alone, walking from the school to downtown, even though it might be a shorter distance, I still feel vulnerable as a person alone and as a youth without someone else there.
Does anybody else want to add?
Thank you.
I know that some of you live downtown-ish or go downtown, so I'd love to hear it from another.
So there's a route that the fastest route to go from the school to my apartment building goes like through downtown, and I stopped using that route because I just don't think it's a good idea for me to be like walking alone. Like if I'm with a friend, then yeah. Then same thing going to NEYT and the Boys and Girls Club. But yeah, I tend to avoid downtown, like walking alone.
Leo, are there particular streets that you find, that you really want to avoid?
Any route that goes past Walgreens, I prefer to avoid. And as well as like I found myself avoiding near the hospital, kind of like the street that goes down there and then connects, and yeah, really mostly, and then also by like by like as you go like more towards downtown by used to be called Sunny's. I don't know what it's called now, but like the gas station and by the hill that goes up.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Other board members, Peter?
So we have, I think, a really good identifiable list of things like I wanted to see. I think when we came out with the, like a couple of years ago when I had this original conversation with Michelle Simpson, who was the executive director of the Boys and Girls Club at that point in time, kind of talked about repurposing these already existing zones using that 500-foot footprint and just kind of expanding it to all places kids congregate, right? But there's a small little caveat that we have to keep in mind, right? So if we roll out some of these things, and I think in the memo it talks about no trespassing people from certain areas, and if those people are like dependent on services that Turning Point, say, has to offer, then that would definitely be within that 500-foot bubble. And if they are, we want to promote sober living and doing those things, then, I'm not sure how to work around it, but that's something I want to actively think about, deploying as much restorative justice as we can. That will also be a thing. I also don't want to, and I know some of the concerns have been around legally permitted activities. Gallery Walk comes to mind. They have a beer garden there. And if we put the kibosh on open containers and put this in here, I think what we're looking at is anything that's not permitted legally. Correct, John? That would be something that we'd put you in charge of that.
Yeah, it's really whatever behaviors the select board wants to address, right. And where do you want to address them?
I think my point being is like I don't want the I don't want people thinking like we're just gonna like dry out downtown and that because there's going to be a lot of areas, the bars and restaurants that have gone through their process to be legally permitted and to serve beer and alcohol and wine. So that's not my goal in executing something like this. And also, I've been receiving a few texts that there are people on Zoom that would like to speak.
Yes, I see them, and they
are
noticed, and I will get to them, I promise you. Franz, you got any thoughts on these locations?
Yeah, I think, well, I'll read the first sentence of this thing I wrote just to exercise my brain a week or so ago. For anyone involved in the affairs of Brattleboro, if you're not hearing the pain and pleading from the people who work and live downtown, it can only have one meaning. You're not listening. And that is what I've been hearing loud and clear from our people here today, from people coming to talk to me during my office hours, again and again and again in speech and in writing. It's a flood of concern about the downtown area. And how you define that? Well, I think the critical place thus far has been Flat Street, the bridge over to the co-op, the Whetstone Pathway, Plaza Park, and the museum. To me, from NEYT to the museum is, just flashing red. But the other places are also very important. And, if we enforce some set of rules in that one area, I don't think it's going to take much for the flashing red to move a block north onto Elliott Street and Harmony Lot, which are certainly not areas that are free of problems, as Ms. Belleville will attest. So, to me, the downtown commercial district it's on fire with concern about these issues, and to the point where people are talking about the demise of downtown Brattleboro commercially and economically, which I would also throw include socially and culturally. And if we don't address that area, I think we're putting the economic, social, and cultural future of Brattleboro at stake. And I'm hearing this loud and clear from so many people, and I think that's our primary responsibility here.
Thanks, Franz. John, on this list, I think the two places that I hear most about these days are Plaza Park and the Preston lot. Preston lot is not on the list, but it's in that kind of flat street corridor. I think Franz brings up a reasonable point about the Whetstone Pathway as well. And so what I would really want us to be doing with any kind of like additional enforcement, additional interventions, is to be informed by reliable, pretty accurate, up-to-the-minute data, right? And so when this concern was brought to us a while back, it was about a certain zone, and I think now there's other areas of concern. It's important that they are, included.
Yeah, and a lot of these behaviors don't generate calls to the police, if that's what you mean, Daniel. It's just things that people see and they kind of deal with it, I think. So I'm not sure how much data we have to really drive that. But what I'm hearing is a focus on the downtown area, even though there are other parts of Brattleboro. At least let's start out with safe zones more in the downtown area. Is that what I'm hearing from the board?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
I think if I can, I think if we're going to do this, we have to look at it in a totality, and that means include anything that drops within the high school, within one of our elementary schools. I think if we're going to do this, let's do it once, and let's just make sure it's all covered. And if we have to play a game of whack-a-mole for a little while until it sorts it out, then that's just the thing that we'll have to do. But I'm getting to a point like where, and again, I preempted all this by saying, we're finally getting to an action point here. So I don't want to get mired in like a bunch of conversation, but I do want to do it once, and I want to do it right, and I want to make sure that we're addressing all the issues that I have been inundated with. I can't get from my shop to the garage without getting stopped 3 times to be asked about these issues. So I'm hearing everybody loud and clear, and we are addressing it. But so I just wanted to make that statement.
Thanks.
So my question back to the board would be: do you want to focus on these types of like places, like schools, parks, parking areas, childcare facilities, flow areas, public house? I mean, if that's what you're looking for, something around particular places like that, or are you thinking about a geographic area that we define and say that's where we're going to tackle first? That would be helpful to kind of.
Again, I can repeat what I just said. I think like it's all one thing to me. So if we just focus on the downtown and it pushes everybody out onto Putney Road or up William Street or something like that, that's exactly what we don't want to have happen. So if we can, define these zones, and again, it's just.
I'm sorry. Would you mind not? Thank you. Go ahead.
So around these zones and put these zones in whatever we call them safety zones, that's fine, but there's a 500-foot bubble around the high school, there's a 500-foot bubble around the Boys and Girls Club, and then the New England Youth Theater and the recreation and the library and as it moves, St. Mike's and all that. I mean, they overlap tremendously, but it covers our downtown.
Yes. Thank you.
I
and
think
we're going to hear from the public in just a second, so please sit tight.
So that, and then if we just have this same thing already in place for the areas outside of our immediate downtown, I just think if we do it once, then we don't have to do it again. It doesn't have to come. We can get this thing done. Our police department has clear and concise information in which to act upon, or, as I've said before, use their judgment and not act upon it. I've never had more faith in our police department and our fire department than I do right now in making those calls in real time. I'm certainly not suited for making those calls in real time, so I trust that they will. But yeah, so.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Elizabeth.
So I look at this from a location standpoint as I would if it were a zoning ordinance.
Okay.
And so I like to treat all categories the same. So I don't want to identify just Flat Street. I want a category that says like all schools and all parks and all this. And I think this list here is pretty comprehensive. As I said, I would add gas pumps and ATMs. But I think that John puts in his memo that there's the history of these drug-free school zones, and the promise really hasn't panned out. And so what we need to do is, renew that with some vigor and tailor it to the needs that we have right now with this crisis, but also just treat it on a more universal land use basis.
Okay, thank you. That's clear.
That was a much better way to say what I
Yes.
said.
So I am going to take the two people on Zoom first. They've raised their little Zoom hands for a while, and then we're going to get to the people in the room. Okay, so sit tight, and I'll be with you in a minute. So let's, you're going to go with Lisa first, Patrick?
Yes.
Okay.
She's had her hand up for a while.
Yep, thank you.
I said my video on. Hi, everybody. Thank you.
Hi, Lisa.
I'm the Boys and Club board chair. So we're located on Flat Street, and I actually have a nice story to share today. I'm on Flat Street speaking to another business owner, and we witnessed a police officer actually approach someone who was drinking at the transportation center and take the can of beer and dump it out. And so I just want to say that these are already enforceable deeds that you have laid out. And I don't, I mean, I really appreciate all the effort that is going into this. And I hope that we can start enforce. It seems like we have the capacity to enforce them with officers who are on patrol. So are you saying we will do this tomorrow because now they're called safety zones? Or why are we waiting to call them safety zones? Like, can we just start enforcing these behaviors as we see them?
Thanks, Lisa. I just want to point out real quick that, like, anything that is currently on this list, or even not on this list, that is some kind of illegal activity, absolutely is enforceable and enforced in this community by a police department using its judgment, using its professional judgment in the moment, right? And so I am not a police officer, and I would not speak to the nuances of particular situations. But I think that, one of the kind of funky things about this conversation actually is that we're talking about behaviors that actually already, in many cases, are already illegal and have clear penalties. I think what the board is trying to do here is establish some zones where we're really focused on eliminating certain undesirable behaviors that people in the community have been telling us, hey, we don't like seeing this stuff and we're not happy about it. And so, it's a little funky, but I'm actually feeling like we're making some progress here. Lisa, I see you. Do you have something to add to that real quick? Just wait to be unmuted, please.
If you're saying these are enforceable, so are the safety zones, do you mean you will be hiring cops to patrol these areas more vigorously? You're putting more money? What is different than what you're doing today?
Yeah.
What are you doing differently than what you're doing today to enforce them? Can you enforce them today?
Yeah, great question. I think we're going to speak to interventions shortly. Liz, you want to say something?
Well, I just wanted to mention that what we haven't talked to yet is the whole trespass aspect.
Mm-hmm.
That's an intervention. If you don't want to talk about it now, I can wait.
Yes, we're going to talk about it in a second because we need to hear from the public. So we're going to go to George, and then we're going to take hands from the room.
Good evening. Just a sidestep, as it were, on the discussion. I think I've mentioned this to a few of you before. Other towns may have some other solutions, and I urge you to get in contact with Portsmouth, New Hampshire. We spent a festival weekend there not long ago, and the entire time was all over the downtown. And And we did not witness one of the things that is on your list the entire weekend we were there. Some other people may have, other towns may have some ideas. That's all I wanted to add.
Thanks, George. Dick, Bonnie, Steve, and then people's names I don't know that I'm going to get to in a second. And hi, I see you as well. So we're trying to speak about locations.
Well, I'll try to stay there.
Great, thanks so much.
I don't know why you just don't use the DID footprint as location for downtown.
Okay.
When you name all these different places, they're all within the DID district. The DID footprint actually extends down to the youth theater, and I believe it extends all the way down Elliott Street to the electrical store where the four-way intersection is. The other thing that we hear a lot about, mentioned it several years ago, and actually Tim Wessel also talked about it, is seeing if we can dispose of the transportation center, see if someone wants to buy it or lease it. Private ownership of that location would allow somebody to do a lot of things that the municipality can't do in terms of trespassing and other things. The other thing which was on your list that I think is important is an ordinance for sleeping downtown. Now, the town has an ordinance that says you cannot sleep in our parks. We don't enforce it. And you have actually 3 downtown, but 2 are the one, Plaza Park and Plenty Park, people sleep in. But there's a lot of people who sleep in storefronts that the police department doesn't go and say you have to get out of there. And so when you as a building owner come and you have vomit and you have defecation in your entryway, if we at least had an ordinance that said no sleeping in the DID district, it certainly would help those people out, something that's enforceable, that when the cops are driving and their nightly shifts, they could say they see somebody and they could force them out of there. Right now they see somebody and they don't do anything because it's private property. So I hear what Fish is saying, but most of the complaints are focused in the DID district. And I would think that, yes, the schools, they're all important. The whole town's important. No one's here going to say it's not. But I liked what John said. Get the data of where we're having most of our complaints. And so if you're only having one complaint, not that it's not important, in some street in the town, we're not going to focus a lot of resources to a one complaint area. So let's focus our resources where we're having the biggest problems. And Putney Road is one of those areas. I mean, that whole corridor on Putney Road, not just the 2 plazas, is a problematic area. Thank you.
Thanks, Dick. John, did you want to say anything about enforcement?
Well, I mean, part of this whole effort is to try to expand our enforcement ability with some hopefully creative interventions that we might be able to get to in a minute. One of the big challenges is, yes, a lot of these behaviors are already illegal, but we don't have the capacity to address them everywhere, all the time, all at once. And that's the problem. I mean, the police they're dealing with issues all over town all the time. They get pulled away. They are going to be coming to you at your next meeting and talking about potentials for additional resources to help us do enforcement in expanded areas. So look forward to that conversation. This is more about trying to set up areas that the community wants to focus efforts in. And if you tell us the whole town is a priority, then we'll spread out the resources for enforcement and everything else as best we can. That's kind of what we've been doing. The question here was more, are there areas that you would like us to focus on and try to get under control, reduce the chaos in particular areas, and then if it has reactions, it has consequences elsewhere, then can we address it? Do we then address it someplace else? But so that's the general idea of this. Just to give a little preview on the intervention. So, for example, like if some of these behaviors, which not all of these are illegal, but if some of them were then be able to be controlled through better trespass by expanding the ability to give trespass beyond like a sworn police officer, so that expands our resources, but it would have to be in an ordinance like this in order for us to be able to do that. If we could implement through images taken on a camera, if something was illegal through an ordinance and we could see it on a camera and they could identify that person, they could then cite them later. You know, right now we can't do that because we can't have somebody everywhere all the time, all at once. That's the challenge. That's the issue why we're trying to find creative ways to address this. I don't know if it will be possible, but this is super helpful feedback from all of you to like now absorb this, take it, and try to bring you back something specific that we can act on.
Great. Thanks, John.
Yep.
Bonnie?
Hi, I'm Bonnie. I'm affiliated with Center Congregational Church. I think we need to be on your list. We are the largest green space on Main Street. We have people sleeping on the lawn every morning. We have tents there every day. I have to do the whole lawn. Scott Cooper, the minister, and I do the whole lawn and pick up sharps. We have been broken into. We have different programs going on in the building. One of our programs is a center for children. The children come up every day and play on the front lawn and sprinklers. We have found so many needles on that front lawn, so we have to do it. We have no choice but to pick up needles from there. And I think, I'm not sure if you're considering us out of town.
No.
But we should be on that list because, and just recently, a couple days ago, there's a big gas tank between the Keene Bank and our building, straight back, and there's a fence around it. We picked up a large, gigantic black trash bag filled with sharps and packets and trash, and there's actually a person sleeping under. They took off one of the pieces of the fence and they have it on a slant. So this is an area where we have all the Afghan people, lots of children all around our building all the time. So, and these are little children too. These aren't even mature people to know not to pick things up necessarily. So please add us to your list.
Yes, thanks, Bonnie. And I think that your location is so very clearly part of our downtown. And I want to kind of actually sort of chime in with what Dick was saying, that Downtown Improvement District, which is what DID stands for, footprint, maybe is a helpful kind of proxy as a starting place.
But I mean, it would certainly, it would simplify it. There's no question about it. I mean, this conversation started out with the already existing drug zones, right? And just when I went back and did a little research when these drug zones were first rolled out, it took some time, but they worked for a short amount of time, and that activity ceased down there. And then as time moves on, it just sort of it creeps back in. None of this stuff happened overnight, right? I mean, this stuff has taken years to get here, and now we're just right now it just feels like we're on fire, and so we just want to put the fire out. But that's not going to happen quickly either. But we're going to move as quickly as possible. But yeah, I mean, redefining it would certainly within the DID would certainly simplify at least our downtown issues.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back to members of the public. I think I said Susan, gentleman at the back, Steve. Oh my God, I've forgotten your name again. It begins with J, right? Yeah.
Susan Belleville, Brattleboro. So I get pretty animated when I talk about the problems and issues in the downtown Brattleboro area. But one of the things that I'm keenly aware of is that we cannot issue citations and arrest warrants our way out of this problem. That because the court system isn't cooperating. It's a popular phrase, catch and release. So the same people who do the dirty deeds day in, day out will be back on the streets again. It is a joint effort between all of the business owners, all of the residents, the police department, and the fire department to not tolerate these behaviors and help to move the people along or provide them with the resources to change their lives and behavior patterns. We've all got to show a lack of tolerance for what is being done. I've gotten the best results when I call people out on their bad behaviors and say, I'm not going to tolerate this from you. You can either change your behaviors and we can have a conversation, or you can move along. The thing that I noticed when you put the security officers in the parking garage, the amount of bad traffic that instantly showed up on Elliott Street. It was trackable, because I have cameras out all around the building. It was trackable. It was inevitable. They would come out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or whenever the security officers showed up. They would camp out on all of the storefront steps in front of the building that I manage, block people from coming and going, and they would then leave and go back to the parking garage when the security officer left. It was trackable. So, but constantly telling people, no, you can't do that, you can't have that kind of behavior, they often will change. So like I said, we cannot arrest our way out of it. We cannot issue citations our way out of it. We have to work as a community to say we're not going to put up with it anymore. We're not going to offer you a pass because you have a substance abuse issue. You're doing nothing to help change your life. You're doing nothing but making my life more miserable.
Thanks, Susan. Gentleman at the back. Yep. Sorry, this one here. Yeah. Just trying to hear from people we haven't heard from already. And then I see a couple of hands on Zoom that I'll get to shortly.
Thank you. I'm Jeff Kane, live in Brattleboro. I want to reinforce what was just said in some ways. I want to support this initiative very strongly and add to it. We're talking about unpleasant, disruptive behavior. It's human behavior. And I'm a physician. I've worked in addiction medicine for 50 years, 20 of those years in Brattleboro. And I've sat with the humans who have these problems. Mm-hmm. And everyone has a story. I've sat with people who have, penthouses and large homes, as well as people who are undomiciled. Everyone's a human being. Everybody has a problem. And in order to get better from addiction, which is often characterized by people doing things that goes against their own values, like, dumping in the garden, people aren't necessarily happy doing that, yet accountability and people presenting displeasure and consequences to the behavior is one of the most powerful tools for behavior change. So if Brattleboro is forcefully on its way to becoming an accountable community for disruptive behavior, what ought to go with that is the acceptance, understanding. Acceptance doesn't mean approval or agreement. It just means non-judgment. And along with this accountability, I think there needs to be a sensitivity to the services that people need to get out of the rut that they're in. And that comes back to the issue of housing. It comes back to the availability of mental health services and addiction treatment services and other social services. So I think this conversation is very focused on the accountability piece and have at it, yet keep in mind who the people are that the objective is to influence, and think about what their needs are as this goes forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Let's go to Zoom for a couple here. So I think we've got Bethany. Hi, Bethany.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted, right?
Yeah.
Hi, Bethany Ramquist. I am representing New England Youth Theater. First, I just wanted to give a shout out to some of the students who are there this evening. Are connected with our youth theater, and I'm really proud to see the way that they are speaking up for what they need and to try to make their world better. It's pretty awesome. Second, I guess I have only just a couple things. I'll keep it really brief. I want to just say that I really appreciate that. I appreciate the process that's been happening. It was really interesting to be at the meeting a couple weeks ago. I wasn't able to be there tonight, but I've been listening in. And I definitely can see that there's attempts being tried and thoughts coming up, and we're trying to figure stuff out, and I appreciate that. I just want to voice my gratitude to all of you for taking this on because it's huge. And then I think I'm going to forget one thing that I wanted to say, but the big thing that I have heard a couple times that I really want to encourage discussion about is the presentation that we had a couple weeks ago from the state about data tracking and like information gathering was fantastic. And also one of the things that struck me the most about that meeting was when the deputy chief talked about the fact that if people don't call, then we don't know that there's a problem. And I think so much what we're hearing is that so many people are just cleaning up their properties and asking people to leave from sleeping on their properties and and doing the work themselves and not thinking we should call about this. We should get involved in data track with this. Like that I think was eye-opening for those of us that were there, that there's a reason we should call, and get assistance for something like asking somebody to move away from our space when they're on our space. So when you're thinking in terms of looking at areas of interest, I think it's really important not to only rely on that data, because I can tell you, I was listening in because I couldn't be there tonight. And so while I was listening, had my kid in the car, drove through the NEYT parking lot, because it's what I do almost every night when I'm on my way home. And we had 3 people sitting there with needles actively doing stuff. And I had my kid in the car and I was listening in. So I didn't call the police, but I give a heads up to the people that are working for our theater so that they know tomorrow morning to check those spots. So I guess I just want to ask for caution when it comes to just using the data that's being tracked, because it gave some hot spots, but I think it also is really important to take anecdotally that the majority of the town is taking this on themselves and doing the cleanup themselves and asking people to move along themselves. And as Mr. DeGray said, cleaning up vomit from their storefronts, that might not be that might not be data tracked, but it's happening. Thank you.
Just one thought that I had about that this week was I have had moments where I'm like, should I call the police department about this thing? And I decided not to. And sometimes it's like, maybe I feel unclear about whether it's worth calling about, whether I should be calling about it. And I wondered whether some kind of reporting mechanism that was a little easier for folks to access might be useful, maybe not for a response, but for a kind of gathering information about unacceptable things in our community. Sort of like a 311 kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there.
Can I sort of talk to that? I mean, there's nothing easier than just making a quick phone call to a tip line.
Well,
so
yes.
Well, no, I'm
some
serious.
people really don't like making phone calls, but yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm here to say get over it.
Great.
No, I'm serious. I'm here to literally say get over it. I want to really emphasize that. Just like that. That's the behavior that when we talk as a community helps this community, is reporting that stuff. So if you can't take the time to make the phone call, then it's almost like, no vote, no opinion, right? I mean, we have to make it. And the phone number is easy. I've literally taken the time to write it on the back of all my business cards, 802-251-8188. It's stuff that helps drive the data. It's stuff that helps us inform. We know you don't have to leave your name. If you want to, that's great. They can follow up with you. They will eventually get to you. They're pretty busy. And when you talk to Chief Hardy, she is a huge fan of these phone calls. Again, it's just a tip line. You don't have to leave your name and number. It just allows them to put another pin in the map to know where the problem is and just heightens awareness. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful.
Yeah,
but,
thanks.
Everybody can take a moment to post something toxic on social media. You can also take that time instead to make the phone call.
Thanks, Peter. I hope that you wouldn't doubt how committed I am to.
I don't doubt that at all. I'm just pushing back on the
Given
overall
that I'm
statement of trying to
sitting right here.
simplify something that's already pretty simple.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. All right, Kate.
Hello.
Hi, Kate.
I'm Kate Traskis. I'm the Executive Director of the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance. So I really just want to take a minute to appreciate all of the folks who showed up tonight in the room, representing the downtown and speaking up about downtown issues. So I'm reinforcing what has been said already, that I think the district, which is clearly defined, is a great place to start. And not only does this work help to support our friends and neighbors and business owners, the families who live downtown, the children that visit and support downtown, but our historic downtowns are also the hallmarks of our communities. They are the arts and cultural centers. And if we don't have business people who are interested and entrepreneurs who are interested in trying to be a part of this experience, if they don't have the confidence that that this is a good investment for them, and that is because of public health and safety issues, then this is a real problem. And also that this is the place that we invite our tourists to come to. This is the experience that they're having and then taking away. And so it's just critical that our downtown is vibrant and thriving. So if safety zones are the key to adding additional deterrence for bad behavior, and then if we are working towards becoming more accountable and holding people accountable to that behavior, I am all in. And I really want to thank you for bringing this forward.
Thanks, Kate. So, folks, I want to kind of point out that we are starting to lose people. We're starting to lose some cognitive function maybe up here. It's 9:42. I think that this is not a conversation that ends tonight. I'm going to just keep going, and then we're going to move on to this next bit here. So this is a conversation that John's been getting a lot of feedback about. He's going to be bringing this back at a future meeting, maybe a couple of meetings from now. And so I've asked John if he could speak to the last piece of our memo here, which is about interventions. And Steve, if there's a comment after, I'll make some time for it. We're not wrapping up here. I'm just trying to move it forward. I'd like to get done by 10, really.
Well, this is important too, so
yes,
shouldn't be rushed either.
If this feels like Russian, then I don't know. John, go ahead.
Thanks, Daniel. And I just want to say how much I appreciate everyone's participation and support in this. I mean, this is the kind of thing that we need to figure out together. And I think we've made some good strides tonight. I've heard some great ideas that I think we can start to land this plane and start to figure out like what we could bring back to the board that would be actionable. In terms of interventions, so we heard some stuff. We heard a bunch of stuff already. People kind of like bled into that already a bit, which is great. It's helpful. It's things like there's certainly the citations and the extra deterrence around drug use in drug-free zones, that kind of idea. But there's also, like, if you want us to address an ordinance that helps move people along from, if, say, for example, it's the downtown district, through additional trespass tools, that's something we could look at in terms of a municipal ordinance. We could also have civil fines in there as well as another tool that could be used by either police officers or other town officials. So that's one area, is kind of a question like, do you want us to spend time and bring you back a draft of some sort of ordinance that might help address some of these behaviors in this area, this location that we've been talking about? The second thing would be a communications plan, and that was sort of alluded to by some of the comments that you heard is just like how can we express to people that certain behaviors are unacceptable, and that could be expressed by the town. It could be part of a communications campaign that others join us in, and that it's a concerted effort to say, hey, look, this is just not what we do here in this area. This is not what we do. And everyone who walks by this person, this is not what we do here. Like, how do we convey that and get people on board to communicate something like that? That's a big question, but that's something we could work on and try to bring you back some ideas around some sort of communications of community norms approach, whatever that might look like. And then the third thing we also heard was providing additional services to people who need them, who are suffering and exhibiting these behaviors. And if you want the town to somehow provide things that people need to reduce their behaviors, that's another path we could go down too. That's going to be a lot more resource intensive. We don't have the staff or the capacity or the skills to do a lot of those things, but maybe there are some things that the town could provide. And so those are like the three major areas of intervention that we were suggesting in this memo. It'd be great to get any feedback on, a preference for one of those or more of those. What is it that you would be looking for staff to work on to bring back to you in a couple meetings or so to act on?
Great, thank you. Let's go Peter, Richard, and then Liz, and then Franz, and then Daniel.
That's you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I guess as I'm thinking through this, and we all hear the term, you can't arrest your way out of this, and you can't do that, and that is probably fairly correct. But the whole idea of this thing is to create a difficult space for people to be difficult in, right? And I think if we are doing things like out of the box thinking, like no trespassing them, like, okay, you can't be here anymore, you're gone for what X determination of time, you can't be in the downtown district, and I don't know what that looks like on a whole, and I mean, it's not going to be that simple. When we drill into it, there'll be, what if they live in the downtown district? They can't, what do they do and how do they do it? But I think things like that are just different. Like, I'm going to hand you a fine for $25 that you're never going to pay, and then I have to come and that fine's going to double, and then we're going to come back and we're going to issue you another fine. I think that's just you're on a gerbil wheel now. So this kind of out of the box thinking with like, no, you're now no trespass. You can't be in the zone here. If we catch you in the zone, then this happens. That's the kind of stuff that I'm looking on. That is just different. And again, this all falls into a messaging campaign. And a few of the people here said this tonight. And this just isn't an enforced thing by our police department. I mean, this is us working as an entire community to fix this problem. This just doesn't fall on one municipal leg of this government.
Thank you. Richard?
I want to offer a small Band-Aid intervention. It's not a cure-all, but I just want to throw out a suggestion. There's this wonderful one-page resource guide that I get it from the town manager's office. So and my suggestion would be, it's 2023, but I'm not sure it's been updated, but it's, as far as I can tell, it's very accurate. It's all the resources available in the community. And what I would suggest is that people get a few of these and carry around with them. And when somebody if you see somebody in there asking you for money or begging or panhandling or whatever it is, hand them one of these. Don't give them money. Hand them one of these. And this, I think this is the best you can do in a situation like that. And in that, you're maybe indirectly telling them you want them to be accountable for their own behavior, and this is where it starts. So,
great.
I'll leave these here if anybody wants to see what it looks like. It's a wonderful little chart.
Thanks, Richard. Are you interested in seeing an ordinance come forward for your consideration? Are you interested in seeing an ordinance come forward for your consideration?
An ordinance?
No, not related to that, but related to what we were just talking about before, where there could be an ordinance that potentially trespasses people from a zone for unacceptable behavior.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
if an ordinance could cover something like that.
Okay, thank you. Franz?
It's
Liz. Fine. Whichever was first, it's getting late.
Okay.
Thank you.
There's a lot of interesting things in this memo that John Potter wrote that you should all be reading. The question of whether or not social services should be performed by the town, I'm against that because there's, as Richard just said, so many social services that already exist to help people. And so they should be called in, which very much is what Project CARE is all about. So let's use the resources that we have. I'm also very much in favor of a community campaign, a communications campaign, and I really liked what the doctor said about accountability. You know, if you talk to the people at Turning Point, they're big on accountability, and I think we can all understand why. And also, I'm very much in favor of this whole ordinance with the trespass idea. And what I like about it the most is that it fits into the other initiatives that we're trying to coalesce around, which is the police data and the core mental health services, and what we're talking about here is the people who can't be reached in any other way. And so if we join forces to, with the trespass ordinance and the mental health awareness and the, drug-related services, get these people what they need, but also make them accountable and not have them be, obstreperous. I'm a mom, so I can use that word.
Thanks, Liz. Okay, Franz?
Well, I'm certainly not opposed to ordinances, but I think the devil's in the details on that one. How's it actually going to work in practice? So if someone comes up with some language, I'll look at it, but I'm not real optimistic that that's going to be what makes the difference. But I'm not against it in principle. So what can we do about things? I think there's a couple of things that are really needed. I think we need increased police presence downtown on foot or on bicycles. I think that's just one of the ingredients that we need. I think the idea of a community effort to change how people think, not only the people who we're trying to reach and provide services to in terms of their thinking about what they're doing and what resources are available that might help them do otherwise. I think that's very important to get started on that. But I think the thinking and the behavior of people who are downtown shopping or walking back and forth to school and all that's important too. And a key question for me here is, well, what is the motivation for the people who are downtown and engaged in behaviors that are unacceptable? And one of the key motivators is that they're asking for money, and they're getting money. And as long as we're giving them money, they're going to be there asking for money. And I think the population of this town needs to come to the conclusion that that is not helping, that is actually enabling a lot of the bad behaviors and preventing people from getting the kind of help that they need. So, if you're talking about interventions, I think that I'm absolutely in favor of a community-based, join with us people here, it's not just the select board on this, a community-based effort to change people's thinking in this town about how things are working. I spent over an hour this morning in Keene with one of their city councilors who's been active in this area for over 10 years and hearing what do they do differently. They don't have an ordinance that's different, but they do very explicitly make an effort on behalf of law enforcement, but also just people in the community to set standards, establish limits, and apparently it works. So, you know, I don't know that there's a magic bullet here, but I think we need to get moving now on the things that could make a difference. And I think the things I mentioned about behaviors on our part and offering services that are needed, key ingredient. I would throw in, we need better bathroom facilities, more bathroom facilities downtown. How to do that, there's been a lot of talk about it already, but you know, yeah, we need to provide for people's needs, we need to hold people accountable, we need to hold ourselves accountable, and we also need additional law enforcement.
Great, thanks, France. So it sounds to me like there's at least enough interest from this board to bring forward a draft ordinance for us to consider. It's draft, it's for consideration. We'll get into the details of that at a future meeting. I'm fine with seeing that. I'd be curious to have that conversation. I think when we're talking about interventions, I think the doctor said it very eloquently. Really what we're talking about is humans, and we're talking about relationships. I'm a person with some experience in recovery. I spent many years not moving towards recovery, causing some small amount of chaos in my life and in my family's life. You know, it didn't maybe look as bad as some other people's, but it was plenty bad enough for me and people that I loved. And, you know, what allowed for me to kind of change was like having some moments where there was like, wow, some chaos caused a thing that led to me, you know, maybe not super willingly seeking out some help. And then eventually seeing the benefit of making changes in my life. Like, it's a slow process. It's a process with a lot of stumbling. It's a process that needs a lot of support and care, quite frankly. And so we do a lot of othering in this community. We talk about these people. These are our people, and we need to care for them. You know, yes, we also need to hold them accountable. And yes, for those of us who have family members who struggle with substance use, we know that they're very hard to love at times. I just lost my brother-in-law to a drug overdose like 2 months ago. So, you know, these are not like issues that the select board is in some way insulated from, that is above in some sort of ivory tower. So I think that, yes, we need to hold people accountable. Yes, we can try some interventions like trespassing, like, you know, civil penalties. But we already have a police department and a fire EMS department that really knows its community. I think somebody said it earlier that they know the bad guys, but I actually don't think, I think that's too narrow and simplistic a way of thinking about it. These are folks that know their community, that care about them, that are in relationship with them. Our service providers at Groundworks, at HCRS, at Interaction, at SEVCA, we know our community as well. And like, you know, we have pretty realistic understanding of the folks that we're working with. We don't think that everybody is perfect and an angel, but we also don't think that just because they're struggling that they're a monster. And I think that as a community we can do better. I think that as public safety, you know, if it is the public safety departments that will end up intervening with folks exhibiting unacceptable behaviors, some of that stuff might have like a law enforcement kind of piece to it, but some of it might be just really good, caring referrals to people that are better placed to serve those folks. And that's kind of the work that we're doing in the public safety enhancement team process, which is sometimes called the Jim Baker process. If you were here at the meeting last time, you heard about that. So what we set in motion last time was a series of meetings where we're going to be considering public safety matters. This is one of them. I know there's more to say, right? There's a lot more to say. But I think that we're moving forward, inching forward. We're hearing from people. We're having some hard conversations. And I think that we can get to a place where we can start to have better impacts than we're currently having. Okay, so I feel like, John, at this point, we've kind of landed it as best we can for tonight. I don't know if the board has anything additional they want to say, maybe a couple of comments from the public, and then I'd like us to move on because it's hard to do good work at this time of night. Alex, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What I wanted to say is I just really wanted to encourage the board and offer the board, like, just to reach out to us and maybe ask to work with us because, you know, I'm lucky enough to be working with 13 of the most clever, hardworking, intellectual people. And unfortunately, I believe that a lot of people think that a lot of stuff goes over kids' heads. And sometimes, unfortunately, that's not the case. We all have we all have so many stories we would love to share with you, which maybe we didn't get time to tell you now, but we are doing great work, and I think that the only thing that is keeping us from being able to spread out is there not being enough adult listening ears and us not having enough opportunities to like work with higher management of the town. I mean, there's only so much that we can do, and while I like to say that we're doing a really great job of it, I personally, and I think I can speak for the rest of us, would be really interested in having you at one of our meetings to talk about things and to hear your side of it and just hear our side of it. And just thank you so much for letting us be here.
Yeah, I'll make sure that you have our contact information. And yep, Maddie.
I also wanted to say, upon being a part of the Brattleboro Youth Council, I'm also part of the student safety at the local high school. And basically what I want to say is that what you're pointing out, we've pointed out too, and we don't feel like we have the voice either to be able to say that. So we would like maybe for you to get in contact with our local principal so we could invite you to a meeting so we could see what we can do to help the community, but also realizing that we also are seeing what you guys are seeing.
Like in the schools.
In the school board.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Other members of the public that would like to speak before we kind of move on. So Steve, and then... No, your neighbor. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to make a couple comments. You were talking safety zones, and so I never had a chance to respond. So just to quickly, you know, it sounds like safety zones, defining those is a good idea to start with, but obviously, as you've already mentioned, the crime can move in different areas. So really, what you're trying to achieve is to, you know, go where the crime is, right? I mean, if it's not in a safety zone, then you've got to. So we're talking about enforcement, stepped up enforcement of wherever the crime is. Yes, safety zones may be a good place to start because those are the hot areas right now. But just don't want to, you know, forget that the goal is to deal with crime. One thing I wanted to mention too is people have mentioned a police presence being in the parking garage, and I think that's a good idea. One last thing, the few speakers that spoke here talked about people on the street. People have approached me, harassed me for money, and I will talk with them. I was asked for money at one point for food, and I said, well, can I buy you some food? Well, oh, no, I need money. You know, no, well, I'll get you some food. No, I need money. I need to buy it myself. I said, why? You know, well, I have a special diet. You know, but my point is, I told that person that Brattleboro has food banks to go to, okay? So when I see people on the street and they come to me, I discuss with them a little bit about that, and I make that point that Brattleboro has food banks. They don't need to go to shops on Main Street to get free food, even though they may be giving that. To me, that's kind of detrimental to the downtown and the business area. But I talk to people and I say, try the food bank. I think that's the appropriate place that they should go. Granted, I have sympathy for them too. They're in a tough place. I understand that. But we're trying to save the downtown. That's the purpose of what we're trying to achieve here. And I'm just asking, I'm not going to, you don't have to answer me, but is anybody on the board, do you do that? Or you might think about doing that. Talk to some of these people who are asking for money that are on the street and respond. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Okay. Lady in the white shirt, whose name I forgot.
Callie.
Tell me.
My name is Callie. Hi. I really want to thank the young people that are here that spoke up. It takes so much courage to do that, so I applaud you. Thank you for your information. It's really important. And I do want to say that in preparation for this meeting here tonight, I've researched a lot of the ordinances of the town, and I think that we already have a lot of the ordinances that we need in place. We just have to enforce them. I think we already have a no trespass. John, do you think we do? No trespass ordinance? Does anybody?
Being quizzed publicly on the town's ordinances?
I guess, yeah.
I wouldn't venture a guess that I think.
Okay, I think we do. So I think a little research in that area.
Is that all your questions?
Sorry,
or?
I can't hear you.
Is that all of your questions? Or are you done?
Well, I did. Okay, my question is, would you please research the town ordinances, because I think we don't need another one, because, as you said, John Potter, it's going to cost money if we create a new ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
You said it would involve lawyers, I think. That's what I read.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Ma'am, and then we're going to wrap up.
My name is Nicole Chase. I own Twice Upon a Time downtown. And I'm really glad that this is all going on, because obviously I deal with this every single day. And when I say deal with this, I mean people who live here and people who don't, people who are interested in recovery, and definitely people who aren't. I confront them every day. I fear for my safety a lot. I grew up here. My mom grew up here. I put a lot of time and effort and work into being a meaningful part of Brattleboro. And I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. I just do that. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But I've really tried hard to be like a meaningful, hardworking part of the downtown. And it's really just not feeling safe. I've had my license plate stolen, my gas siphoned, my tires popped, my merchandise stolen, my wallet stolen from my own counter. I just wouldn't feel right if I didn't stand up and show you my face. And this is happening to real people, just like it's happening to them on the street with a cardboard sign. It's also happening to me and my family and my business and my livelihood. So I do think that there should be signage up telling people not to give, that giving money can actually cause a death. It can cause people to get hurt. And that if they want to give charity, there are charities to give to, and there are signs that they make that say this, save lives, it saves lives, and give to these charities like Groundworks, Sevka, and meaningful organizations that really help. And I think it's important to help the people who want to be helped and to say no to the people who aren't wanting to be helped, who are here just to victimize, because that's what it feels like. And I'm all for helping, and I support all of those organizations as a business and as a person, a private citizen, and I want better for this town. I grew up here with my sister and my mother, and I've worked my butt off, and we deserve better. This downtown deserves better, and I'm really glad you're working on it, and I'm proud that things are happening, and I'll be at the next meeting with a letter and a petition and solutions, because we need them. We need to all work together to keep the streets clean and to keep sharps off the sidewalks and to keep the parks clean and to keep flowers everywhere where they're supposed to be so that people feel welcome and people feel safe. Because my customers don't and my family doesn't, and we can do better. So,
thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, so I appreciate all of the contributions this evening. Thank you, Youth Council, Cassandra. We are going to move on to the next item of our agenda, which is committee appointments. We will continue this conversation in future meetings, so I encourage you all to stay engaged. Thank you. And so, board, we have in front of us a potential committee appointment to the Conservation Commission. At 5:30, we conducted an interview nearly 5 hours ago. And we interviewed Ricky Rosati. I'll let folks filter out, maybe. Patrick, would you help with the Cosman room? Sure. Thanks.
Can I run over there for 1 second?
You can do what you want to do, Richard. We're going to do the board's business over here. So, board, we got a committee application from Ricky Rosati for the Conservation Commission. And I'm looking for a potential nomination or something else. Okay, seeing no nomination, then I would move that we do not make this appointment. And that is the end of that agenda item. The only other thing on our agenda is to adjourn. So I'll take a motion. Liz.
I move to adjourn.
Okay, Liz has made a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. That passes 4-0. You missed it. We are adjourned.